What happens when a lifetime of manipulation and lies finally come to light? Violet's life has been defined by a cold, emotionally neglectful mother and the constant yearning for love she never received. When Violet's engagement to David is met with her mother's sabotage, it sets the stage for an explosive confrontation. Stay tuned to see how Violet takes control of her own story, and don't forget to subscribe for more gripping tales of family, love, and self-discovery. My earliest memories are snapshots bathed in a melancholic blue. Dad, a faded figure trapped in the pages of an old photo album left before I turned 5. Mom Anna became a storm cloud, dark and swirling, hovering over our cramped apartment. One moment she'd be scrubbing the kitchen floor furiously, muttering about starting fresh. The next, she'd grab me in a hug so tight it stole my breath. These rare, suffocating embraces were the only affection I ever received, the only love I could grasp at. Mostly, I was a small shadow trailing behind her like an afterthought. She flitted about the apartment, her face always etched with a worry that had its own pulse. Sometimes, when her brow furrowed deep enough, she'd leave me with Mrs. Marigold downstairs. When Mom finally returned, the tension in the air would crackle like static electricity, an invisible weight settling over the room. She'd ruffle my hair absent-mindedly, a gesture that felt more like an obligation than a sign of affection. Then, a fleeting smile so rare, so fragile would pass across her face, a brief glimpse of the warmth I was always yearning for. Mom started dating again, and that's when Astor entered our lives. He was different, calm, a stillness in his movements that contrasted Mom's constant whirlwind. He treated me with a kindness I wasn't used to, a kindness that felt foreign in our tense, fractured home. One day, after yet another humiliating incident at school with Rose Miller and her clique, I found myself clinging to Astor on the couch, tears streaming down my face. "Why do they always pick on me?" I mumbled into his shirt, my chest tight with the familiar ache of loneliness. He knelt before me, his gaze soft with a concern that was rare in my world. "They pick on you because they're insecure," he said, his voice gentle, wiping away a stray tear. "They try to feel powerful by making others feel small." His words were like a balm to my aching spirit, and for a moment, a flicker of hope sparked inside me. Maybe, just maybe, things were starting to look up. But hope, in my world, was a fragile butterfly, delicate, fleeting, and easily crushed. Then came Daisy, a tiny bundle of joy with eyes that mirrored Mom's. She arrived a year later, and suddenly I wasn't the center of attention anymore. The warmth, the affection that had once been directed at me evaporated, replaced by a cold indifference. Mom's focus shifted entirely to Daisy, and I was left to navigate the confusion of childhood alone. 14 awkward braces, a permanent frizz halo around my head, and an insecurity so big it felt like it could swallow me whole. It was also the age when Mom's negativity toward me fully bloomed, spreading like weeds through my life. Take picture day, for example. Mom took the day off work to fuss over Daisy's pigtails, picking out the perfect sparkly dress for her. When it was my turn, a sigh escaped her lips as she rifled through my closet. "Ugh, nothing decent in here," she muttered, her tone dripping with disappointment. On picture day, Daisy looked like a little princess, and I resembled a rumpled dandelion next to her radiant sunflower. Mom cooed over Daisy's photo, while mine barely got a glance before she dismissed it with a grunt. Astor, bless his kind heart, tried to be the positive voice in my life. He took me shopping sometimes, helping me pick out clothes that actually fit, clothes that flattered me. But one day, after yet another soul-crushing encounter with Mom, I found myself clinging to Astor, my need for comfort overwhelming. "Dad!" The word slipped out before I could stop it. He froze, his expression a painful mix of surprise and sadness. And just as quickly, Mom appeared in the doorway, her eyes blazing with fury. "You have one father, Violet," she hissed, venom dripping from her words. "And trust me, he deserves you." Her words struck me like a slap across the face. Astor, sensing the tension, awkwardly ruffled my hair. "Look, it's okay," he mumbled. But it wasn't. It had never been okay. "It's not okay," I choked out, tears welling up in my eyes. Daisy, who had been watching the whole scene unfold with a smug expression, suddenly piped up, "Violet's been bad again, Daddy. She took my candy without asking." 16. The land of first crushes, awkward dances, and a constant knot of nerves in my stomach. Dating, however, was a minefield in my house. Mom had a knack for sabotaging any potential romance before it even sprouted legs. Take Lavender, for example. Tall, funny, and with a smile that could melt glaciers. He was everything a teenage girl could dream of. After weeks of nervous texts and stolen glances, I finally gathered the courage to ask him out. He said yes. Excitement bubbled in my chest, a feeling quickly replaced with dread at the thought of him meeting Mom. The night of our date, Mom went into overdrive. She fussed over Daisy's bedtime story, making sure it stretched on for an eternity. When Lavender finally arrived, looking nervous but sweet, Mom greeted him with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Violet never cleans her room," she announced casually, as if discussing the weather. "You might find socks and pizza boxes under that mountain of clothes." My cheeks burned like they were on fire. Lavender gave a nervous chuckle, but the awkward silence stretched like a bad joke. The rest of the evening was a disaster. Mom kept making snide re-lavenders about my weight, my taste in music, even my choice of college. By the end of the night, Lavender practically ran out the door, leaving me feeling like a deflated balloon. The story repeated itself with a few unfortunate guys after that. Each time I brought someone home, Mom would turn into a master of backhanded compliments and subtle digs. My self-confidence took a nosedive, and any potential relationship fizzled out faster than a wet firecracker. 18. The age of college applications, nervous goodbyes, and a fierce determination to break free from the suffocating grip of my childhood. Senior year became my mission control, a strategic plan to launch myself into a world where Mom's negativity couldn't reach me. College applications became my weapon of choice. I spent hours hunched over the kitchen table, pouring my heart and dreams onto those pristine white pages. Every acceptance letter was a victory, a tiny shard of hope chipping away at the wall Mom had built around me. Of course, she didn't make it easy. When I announced my acceptance to a university across the state, her reaction was a masterpiece of passive aggression. "Oh, Violet," she sighed, shaking her head. "So far away. How will we ever see each other?" It was a question loaded with guilt, but I wasn't falling for it anymore. "We can video chat, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Besides, there are these things called airplanes." Astor, my ever-supportive anchor, was thrilled for me. "This is amazing, Violet," he beamed, pulling me into a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you." His words were a warm hug on a cold day. He may not have been my dad by blood, but he felt more like one than the man who walked out on us all those years ago. College was a revelation. Surrounded by people who had no idea about my family history, I finally felt like I could breathe. I bloomed in the midst of new experiences, pushing myself academically and forming friendships that felt genuine, supportive, and effortless. 27, the age of adulting. Endless spreadsheets, and a tiny apartment that felt like a palace compared to the cramped confines of my childhood bedroom. Life, for the most part, was good. My job as an economist kept my mind sharp, always buzzing with data and analysis, while David, my incredible boyfriend of several years, filled my life with warmth and laughter I hadn't known before. One evening, as we shared takeout Thai food and a bottle of wine, David casually dropped a bombshell. "So," he said, that goofy grin I adored spreading across his face, "I think it's time we met each other's parents." My stomach lurched. Meeting David's parents had been a breeze. His home, cozy and welcoming, smelled like freshly cut grass in the backyard. His mom, Sarah, smothered me in hugs, and his dad, Michael, spent the evening cracking jokes that had me snorting into my napkin. They were warm, funny, and genuinely interested in getting to know me. It felt normal, a word I had never dared associate with family dinners in my past. But the thought of David meeting my family, the one I'd been trying to escape for years, dread filled me like a rising tide. How could I explain the years of emotional neglect, the constant jabs, the suffocating negativity? I told him everything, the fights, the tears, the way Mom had eroded my self-esteem for years. Daisy, unsurprisingly, hadn't changed, still a master manipulator, knowing exactly how to push my buttons. David listened, his hand resting gently on mine. "Violet," he said firmly, "I'm marrying you, not your family. They may be baggage, but you're the prize." His words were a balm to my soul, a declaration of love that washed away years of doubt. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally build the happy family I had always dreamed of, a family filled with love, acceptance, and laughter. The kind of family I never had, but the one I always deserved. But still, I couldn't shake the tight knot in my stomach. This was it. D-Day. The moment I would break the news about David and our engagement. I dialed Astor's number, my heart pounding. "Hey, Violet, what's up?" Astor's familiar voice boomed through the phone. "Hey, Astor," I said, taking a deep breath. "There's something I need to tell you." I dove straight into the story, David, the proposal, the wedding, and waited. A comfortable silence followed. Then Astor's genuine laugh filled the air. "Violet, that's fantastic! I'm so happy for you both!" His words washed over me like a warm wave, easing the anxiety that had gripped me. "You've got to bring him over for dinner. Let me meet the guy who finally snagged you." David, ever supportive, was all for it. So, a few weeks later, we found ourselves pulling up to my childhood home, a place that still held an odd mixture of nostalgia and dread. Mom answered the door, her face lighting up with surprise. "Violet, you came to visit! And who is this handsome fella?" "Mom, this is David, my fiancé," I said, offering a tight smile. David stepped forward, extending his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Turner." Mom beamed, shaking his hand a little too enthusiastically. "The pleasure's all mine, dear. So, David, what do you do for a living?" David, oblivious to the undercurrent in her question, launched into a detailed explanation of his work as a director at a large company. Astor, ever the smooth operator, chimed in with jokes and stories, keeping the conversation flowing effortlessly. But Daisy? Daisy wasn't about to be left out. She spent the entire meal batting her eyelashes at David, interrupting our conversation to pepper him with asinine questions about his job and hobbies. Mom, ever the doting mother, hung on to Daisy's every word, a stark contrast to the thinly veiled barbs she kept throwing my way. "Violet, honey," she said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness, "you really should take some fashion tips from Daisy. That dress you're wearing, well, it's not exactly flattering." David, thankfully, seemed oblivious to the digs, but I knew exactly what Mom was doing. She was subtly putting me down, making me feel insecure right in front of my fiancé. The entire dinner felt like a twisted performance, a play where I was constantly reminded of how I wasn't good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough. By the time dessert rolled around, I was ready to run screaming. As soon as it was polite, we made our excuses and left. The moment we were safely buckled into the car, David let out a long sigh. "Your mom, she's a character, isn't she?" he said, a hint of amusement in his voice. "Yeah," I muttered, a wave of exhaustion washing over me. "She can be." He squeezed my hand gently. "But hey, we made it through dinner, right?" He was right. We had. And even with Mom's negativity hanging in the air like a bad smell, the simple act of holding David's hand filled me with a sense of strength and purpose. This was my future, a future I was building with him, not with my dysfunctional family. The warm glow of post-dinner satisfaction lingered in the air as David and I curled up on the couch, poring over wedding magazines. We envisioned a small, intimate ceremony in a charming vineyard surrounded by the people who loved and supported us. It was perfect. Then, the next morning, the dream shattered into a million pieces. My phone buzzed with David's name, his usual cheerful ringtone replaced by a ringing that sent a shiver down my spine. "Violet," he said, his voice tight with a mix of anger and disbelief. "We have a problem." My stomach lurched. "What's wrong?" He took a deep breath. "Your mom?" The blood drained from my face. "What did she do this time?" David explained, his words hitting me like punches. Mom, the ever-reliable manipulator, had somehow unearthed his work phone number. and instead of a congratulatory call, she'd unleashed a verbal tirade that would make a sailor blush. Apparently, in her twisted world, I was the epitome of inadequacy, ugly, dull, and lacking any social graces. It didn't stop there. She'd even dragged Dad into it, dredging up his abandonment years ago like a weapon. But the pièce de résistance, she'd suggested David ditch me and turn his sights on Daisy, claiming my younger sister was the epitome of beauty and brains. Fury boiled up inside me, a hot, venomous rage. How dare she? How dare she try to sabotage my happiness yet again? David, bless his heart, was furious too, but he channeled his anger into something unexpected. A plan. A crazy, audacious plan that was equal parts risky and thrilling. "We expose her," he said, his jaw clenched. "We set a trap." The plan was audacious in its simplicity. David would call Mom back, pretend to be swayed by her words, and arrange a meeting to discuss this ludicrous proposal. His goal, to record the entire conversation on his phone. David made the call, his voice smooth and convincing. Mom, completely oblivious to the web she was about to walk into, readily agreed to meet him for coffee. A nervous laugh bubbled up from my chest. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown was a go. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I wasn't going to let my mother dictate my future any longer. This time, the tables were turning, and I was ready to play for keeps. I decided to attend their meeting. The thought of confronting Mom, especially disguised as a stranger, sent shivers down my spine, but the anger simmering inside me, the anger at her constant negativity and her attempt to sabotage my happiness, was a powerful motivator. Back in my comfy jeans and a worn-out t-shirt, I slipped into a corner booth at a bustling cafe across the street from our designated meeting spot. Thick, black glasses perched on my nose completed the disguise, transforming me into a nondescript observer. Butterflies danced a frenetic jig in my stomach as I watched Mom sashay into the cafe, a triumphant smile plastered on her face. She spotted David at the pre-arranged table in a private room, her smile widening further. This was it. Operation Momzilla Takedown was officially underway. David, bless his tech-savvy heart, had discreetly turned on the dictaphone on his phone. Me? Well, I heard their entire conversation in the immediate vicinity. Their conversation started innocently enough, David playing the part of the interested suitor. Then Mom, completely ignoring his phone, launched into her diatribe. "You know, David," she began, leaning in conspiratorially, "between you and me, Violet just isn't wife material." My blood ran cold. The woman who was supposed to be my mother, the woman who was supposed to love and support me, was bad-mouthing me to a complete stranger. "She's, well, a bit simple," Mom continued, her voice laced with fake sympathy. "Not very pretty either, if you know what I mean." David, to his credit, kept his face impassive, simply nodding along and murmuring non-committal phrases. Inside, I knew he must be fuming. "But Daisy," Mom's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper, "now that's a girl with potential. Smart, beautiful, knows how to handle herself in society." The audacity of it all. Daisy, with her airhead personality and complete lack of work ethic, was apparently the epitome of elegance and intelligence, according to Mom. The conversation continued, a masterclass in manipulation and deceit. Mom, blinded by her own delusions, even confessed to never loving my stepfather, claiming she'd only married him for his money. The woman had no shame. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Mom stood up, her face radiating self-satisfaction. "Well, David, it was lovely meeting you. Think about what I said," she purred, patting his hand with a perfectly manicured nail as she walked out of the cafe. I could only shake my head in disbelief. "So, what now?" I asked, my voice tight. David pulled me into a hug, his touch a source of comfort amidst the swirling storm of emotions. "Now," he said, his voice firm, "we expose her." The air crackled with tension as I walked into my childhood home that weekend. Mom's smile was a mile wide, radiating a smugness that set my teeth on edge. "Violet, honey, you won't believe it," she gushed, the words tumbling out before I even had a chance to say hello. "What's that, Mom?" I asked, already bracing myself for a bombshell. "David," she declared, her voice dripping with a sickening satisfaction, "decided to see reason. He's leaving you and marrying Daisy." My heart did a little stutter, but I forced a smile. "That's great, Mom. Really happy for them." My stepfather, bless his perpetually confused soul, cleared his throat. "Leaving her? But I thought they were getting married." Daisy, who had been lounging on the couch like a pampered cat, snorted a laugh. "Apparently not, Dad. Violet just wasn't good enough for him. Shocker!" I ignored her snide remark, my eyes locked on Mom's triumphant face. It was showtime. "Actually, Mom," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "David's right here." Just then, David walked in, a sly grin plastered on his face. His presence sent a collective gasp echoing through the room. "Hi, everyone," he said, his voice mild. "Just in time for a little family fun." He pulled out his phone and pressed play. The room fell into a suffocating silence as my mother's voice, thick with malice, filled the air. The conversation from the cafe unfolded in its entirety, her cruel words about me, her effusive praise for Daisy, and the shocking confession about my stepfather. With each passing sentence, the color drained from my mother's face. My stepfather, already flushed, turned an alarming shade of purple, his jaw hanging slack in disbelief. As for Daisy, her confidence melted away, replaced by a terrified whimper. When the recording ended, the silence was deafening. Then, my stepfather exploded. "You lying snake!" he bellowed, his voice shaking with fury. "You married me for money all these years?" For the first time in my life, I saw my mother look genuinely lost. Tears welled up in her eyes, but they were drowned by the storm of rage brewing in my stepfather's face. "I want a divorce," he spat, his voice thick with anger. "Get a lawyer!" The room erupted. Mom and Daisy burst into tears, their wails an unholy symphony of misery and self-pity. David, poor David, looked as out of place as a fish stranded in a hurricane. But amidst the chaos, I felt a strange, almost serene calm wash over me. The truth, ugly and raw, was finally out in the open. All the years of silent hurt, the manipulation, the lies it all spilled out, shattering the fragile facade of our dysfunctional family. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal battles, my stepfather's choked sobs, and Daisy's icy glares whenever our paths crossed, even at the grocery store. My mother, the architect of the entire mess, retreated into a self-imposed social media blackout, hiding away in her own web of self-justification. As for me, I felt oddly hollow. The anger that had fueled me for so long was gone, leaving behind a void that had yet to be filled. One sunny afternoon, David found me curled up on the couch, mindlessly flipping through wedding magazines that now seemed like relics from a forgotten time. "Hey," he said, his voice laced with concern. "You okay?" I managed a weak smile. "Yeah, just thinking. Everything feels so different." He squeezed in beside me, wrapping his arms around me in a comforting embrace. "It is," he admitted softly. "But hey, different can be good. It's a chance to start fresh." His words were like a gentle nudge, pushing me towards something new. Maybe he was right. Maybe the empty space left by my mother could be filled with something better, something exciting. A spark flickered in my chest. With a mischievous glint in my eye, I said, "What do you say we do something crazy?" David raised an eyebrow. "Crazy like what?" "How about a road trip?" I suggested, a grin spreading across my face. "Just us, a map, and the open road. No expectations, no timelines. Pure adventure." "You had me at road trip," he declared with a grin. And just like that, our plans took a sharp turn. The carefully crafted vineyard ceremony morphed into a spontaneous cross-country adventure. We packed a beat-up camper van with essentials, snacks, a killer playlist, and a well-worn copy of On the Road, setting off with no destination in mind, only the promise of new experiences and shared memories. Fast forward a year, and David and I stood at the altar, exchanging vows under a canopy of fragrant flowers. It wasn't the elaborate ceremony I'd once imagined, but it was perfect. Instead of a disapproving mother, my stepfather, newly divorced and estranged from Daisy, walked me down the aisle. The tears in his eyes were a mixture of pride and regret. As he squeezed my hand, he muttered, "You know, kiddo, I always knew you'd find your happily ever after." Ging! Life after the wedding settled into a comfortable rhythm. David and I built a life together filled with laughter, love, and the occasional road trip adventure. My stepfather became a regular visitor, regaling us with stories from his travels and dropping not-so-subtle hints about wanting to be a grandpa. I'd laugh and reply, "Don't worry, you'll be the best grandpa ever." What do you do when you realize that the people you've tried so hard to please were never capable of loving you the way you needed? When the weight of their manipulation, their cruelty, finally becomes too much to bear? Violet spent her entire life navigating a battlefield of emotional neglect and sabotage. But it wasn't until she faced the ultimate betrayal, her mother's attempt to tear apart her relationship with David, that she finally understood what needed to be done. Her mother's cold, calculated cruelty and her sister's blatant manipulation pushed her to a breaking point. For the first time, Violet took a stand. She wasn't going to let her mother's toxic grip define her future. The plan to expose her mother's actions was risky, but Violet had reached a point where she couldn't let this go unnoticed. With David by her side, they turned the tables on her manipulative mother, using her own words against her. And when the truth came to light, the fragile facade of their family came crashing down. Violet's mother, once the center of her life, was now exposed for what she truly was: selfish, manipulative, and entirely undeserving of her love. For Violet, this was the moment of liberation. The anger and betrayal gave way to a calm clarity. She was finally free. So here's the question. If you were in Violet's shoes, would you have exposed the truth, or would you have tried to keep the peace? How far would you go to protect your happiness from a family that never truly cared? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more. But when her success finally shone through, they came crawling back, not because they wanted her, but because they saw her as a symbol of something they could exploit. When Clara showed up at their housewarming party, it wasn't about reconciliation, it was about making sure the truth came to light. And when she played the recording of her parents' cruel words, their mask of loving parents fell apart. For once, Clara wasn't the invisible one. The truth was now undeniable. Clara made the right choice. She walked away from the family who never truly saw her, and her life is better for it. She's found peace in her own success, surrounded by people who respect and value her. So, what would you do if you were in Clara's shoes? Would you have confronted the lies or kept walking away? Let's talk about it in the comments. And if you found this story powerful, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that expose the truth.
I don't know what my son sees in you. You'll never be good enough for him. Leave before you ruin more lives, Warren snarled, his eyes narrowing as they bore into me across the dinner table. My hands trembled, clinking my fork against the plate. What did I ever do to you? I managed to stammer, my voice barely above a whisper. Just being you was enough, he retorted coldly, not even blinking. The tension in the air was suffocating. Jaden sat beside me, his jaw clenched and face pale. I glanced at him, hoping for support, but he seemed as stunned as I was. Warren's words cut through the jovial atmosphere we had started with when we first arrived. Now it felt like those words were crumbling around us. It had been a typical family dinner, or so I thought. Jaden's mother, Diana, had filled our plates with roast chicken and mashed potatoes, while his sister, Mallory, chatted about her latest project at work. Things were going well until Warren decided to speak his mind. Elena, don't let him get to you, Mallory murmured from across the table, her voice a soft plea. Warren shot her a withering look. Mallory, stay out of this. You have no idea what kind of woman she really is. Jaden finally found his voice. Dad, that's enough. His voice was firm but tinged with a shaky anger. I could see him wrestling with his loyalty towards his father and his love for me. Warren ignored him. You think she loves you? She's after your money. Doesn't matter how long she plays this game, it's always the same. A gold digger. Stop it, Warren. Diana's voice quivered. She reached out to touch her husband's arm, but he brushed her aside. Mom, Dad, this is not fair, Jaden said, standing up, trying to get between us. I love Elena, and she loves me. Warren scoffed. Love? You're naive, Jaden. You think a woman like her at her age isn't looking for financial security? I felt my face burn with anger and humiliation. I have a career. I've worked hard for everything I have. I don't need Jaden's money. Warren's laughter was dry and sharp. Sure, keep telling yourself that, but we all know the truth. Jaden's fists clenched at his sides. Dad, that's enough. His voice was louder now, echoing in the dining room. If you can't accept Elena, then maybe we shouldn't come here anymore. Warren's eyes gleamed with a cold satisfaction, like he'd achieved what he set out to do. Maybe you shouldn't. I rose from my seat, feeling a sharp sting of betrayal. I think it's time we leave, I said softly, grabbing my coat from the back of the chair. Jaden grabbed his car keys, his face set in a hard line. Yeah, let's go. We walked out of the house, the door closing firmly behind us. The night air was chilly, matching the iciness that settled in my heart. As we reached the car, Jaden stopped and turned to me. I'm so sorry, Elena. I didn't think he'd be this way. I looked at him, feeling a mix of sadness and love. It's not your fault, Jaden. But what are we going to do? I don't know, he admitted, the hopelessness in his voice breaking my heart. As we drove away, I couldn't shake Warren's words from my mind. Was this the beginning of a rift too deep to mend? The night felt darker than it should, and the road ahead seemed long and uncertain. The night after dinner at Warren's, I laid awake, staring at the ceiling. The humiliation from Warren's words stung deeper than I wanted to admit. Jaden was beside me, fast asleep, his breathing steady. I envied his ability to shut everything out, even if just temporarily. The next morning, I sipped my coffee in silence as Jaden sat across from me, his face clouded with worry. Elena, he started, unsure of how to continue. I put my cup down, looking at him. You don't need to say it. Your father has made his feelings very clear, Jaden. What I don't understand is why. He's just protective, Jaden sighed, rubbing his temple. He thinks everyone is out to take advantage of us. That still doesn't justify his behavior, I replied, feeling a sharp edge in my voice. I know. Jaden looked defeated, but he has this way of making me doubt everything. I stood up, pacing the kitchen. The wooden floor creaked under my feet. Jaden, you know me. You know I'm not looking for anything but a life with you. Why is that so hard for him to accept? Jaden stood and took my hand. I believe you, I do. But Dad, he's not easy to change. My phone buzzed with a notification. A text from Mallory. Hey, can we meet up? Need to talk about last night. I glanced at Jaden and showed him the message. Go, he said, dropping my hand. Maybe she can provide some insight. I met Mallory at a small cafe downtown. She looked anxious, her fingers tapping on the table as I sat down. Elena, I'm so sorry for how Dad treated you, she began, her voice shaky. He's always been this way, ever since. Ever since when? I asked, leaning forward. Ever since Uncle Leonard came back into our lives, she admitted, looking over her shoulder as if expecting Warren to appear. What do you mean? I asked, puzzled. Leonard has always been the schemer, stirring up trouble. Dad became more paranoid and controlling when Leonard returned from overseas. She ran a hand through her hair. I think they're plotting something against you. Why would they do that? I whispered, despite myself. Because they believe if they push you away, Jaden will stay loyal to the family business. My heart sank. So it's about control and power? Mallory nodded. Dad thinks Jaden will choose the family over you? And Leonard, well, he just enjoys the games. Thanks for telling me, I said, squeezing her hand. But this just makes everything even more complicated. I'll help in any way I can, Mallory promised. But I need to be careful. If Dad finds out I'm helping you... I understand, I assured her. We need to be smart about this. Driving back home, I mulled over Mallory's words. Warren wasn't just worried about me as a person. He saw me as a threat to his control. And Leonard? He thrived on deceit and manipulation. Opening the front door, I found Jaden waiting, the worry lines on his forehead deepening. What did Mallory say? I took a deep breath, choosing my words carefully. Warren and Uncle Leonard are working together. They see me as a threat. It's about control, Jaden. They fear losing you to anything outside their influence. Jaden's face darkened, anger flickering in his eyes. I can't believe they're going this far. We need to be strong, I said, taking his hand. We need to stand together. Jaden nodded. We will, Elena. We'll fight this. Together. Looking into his eyes, I knew the road ahead would be challenging, but we would face it side by side. We wouldn't let Warren's manipulation destroy us. A week passed, and the tension between Jaden and his family showed no signs of easing. I tried to focus on my work, but the anxiety lingered like a shadow. Every vibration of my phone made my heart skip, fearing another attack from Warren or Leonard. One evening, Jaden arrived home, looking more stressed than usual. "Dad's not stopping," he said, dropping his briefcase on the couch. "He's enlisted Uncle Leonard to dig up dirt on you." My stomach churned. "Great, just what we needed," I muttered, sinking into the chair. Jaden sat next to me. "We need to be careful, Elena. Leonard is known for his dirty tactics." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Mallory. "Heads up, Leonard and Dad are spreading rumors about you to the family. Stay strong." I showed the message to Jaden. "They're really pulling out all the stops." Jaden's face hardened. "I won't let them do this to you, to us." Just then, the doorbell rang. Jaden opened it to reveal Leonard standing there, a smug look on his face. "Hello, nephew," Leonard said smoothly. "Mind if I come in?" Jaden's jaw tightened. "What do you want, Leonard?" Leonard glanced at me, feigning surprise. "Oh, is this a bad time?" "This isn't a social call, and you know it," I said, stepping forward to stand beside Jaden. Leonard smirked. "Well, since you're here, Elena, let me be blunt. You're not welcome in our family." "Get to the point, Leonard," Jaden snapped. "Warren and I have been talking," Leonard continued, "and we think it's in everyone's best interest if Elena steps away from the family and from you, Jaden." "You can't be serious," Jaden said, his voice trembling with anger. Leonard shrugged. "We're completely serious. She's a liability. The rumors, well, they're gaining traction. Even your mother is starting to have doubts." I felt a surge of anger. "These lies won't destroy us, Leonard." "We'll see about that," Leonard said, his eyes glinting. "You might find that fighting against family is more than you can handle." Jaden took a step closer to Leonard. "You're playing a dangerous game. I won't stand by and let you ruin our lives." Leonard chuckled. "Family comes first, Jaden. Always has, always will. Think about it." With that, he turned and walked out. Jaden slammed the door shut, his face red with frustration. "You okay?" I asked, reaching for his hand. He shook his head. "I hate them for this. How could they do this to their own family?" "We'll get through it," I assured him. "We just need to stay one step ahead." The next few days were a blur of whispered conversations and sideways glances from Jaden's extended family. Rumors spread like wildfire, accusations about my past, lies about my intentions. Even at work, I could feel the cold stares from coworkers who'd heard the gossip. Meeting Mallory in secret became our only way to stay informed. "They're painting you as a manipulative gold digger," she said one afternoon, her eyes filled with regret. "They're relentless." "But why?" I asked, frustrated. "Why go through so much trouble?" "They think it's the only way to keep control," she answered softly. "They're trying to protect the family business. They don't care who gets hurt along the way." "I won't let them win, Mallory," I vowed. The line between family and enemy had been drawn. Warren and Leonard's actions were setting the stage for a confrontation that was brewing just beneath the surface. Jaden and I were determined to stand united, even as the storm clouds gathered overhead. These battles weren't just about us anymore. They revealed the lengths people would go to for power and control. But no matter what, we would fight back together. The tension was almost unbearable. Each day at work was fraught with whispered rumors and sidelong glances. Jaden and I tried to keep our heads down, but the pressure was mounting. Warren and Leonard's influence had far-reaching consequences. Even Mallory started to distance herself, fearing repercussions. One night, Jaden came home looking exhausted. His tie was askew, and he threw his jacket over the chair. "Dad ambushed me at the office today," he said, rubbing his temple. I approached him, concerned. "What happened?" "He tried to interrogate me about our relationship. He's convinced you're hiding something." Jaden's voice was filled with frustration. "Did you tell him anything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Of course not. But he doesn't believe me. He's convinced you're not who you say you are, and Leonard? He's too good at what he does. We need to do something. I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We can't just sit back and let them tear us apart. Jaden nodded. I know, but I feel stuck. Every time I try to talk to him, it just gets worse. The next morning, I decided I'd had enough. I texted Warren, asking for a meeting. Jaden was hesitant, but he finally agreed. Just be careful, he warned. I arrived at Warren's office, my heart pounding. The receptionist led me into a large, imposing room where Warren sat behind a massive desk. He didn't even look up as I entered. You wanted to see me? I asked, struggling to keep my voice steady. Warren finally looked up, his gaze icy. So you've decided to confront the dragon in his den? I ignored his sarcasm. We need to put an end to this, Warren. Your manipulation is tearing us apart. He leaned back in his chair, a cruel smile curling his lips. I'm only protecting my family, something you know nothing about. You're not protecting anyone, I shot back. You're controlling and destroying relationships. Warren stood, his eyes flashing with anger. You think you can just come into my family and take what you want? You're nothing, a nobody. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I love Jaden, and he loves me. You can't change that with lies and manipulation. You're delusional, Warren sneered. Jaden will come around. He'll see the truth about you. He already knows the truth, I replied firmly, and he's chosen me. Warren's face darkened. You don't belong here. Leave now, and maybe things will settle down. Otherwise, you're going to regret you ever stepped into this family. I left his office with my heart racing, but my resolve strengthened. I wouldn't let Warren intimidate me. When I got home, Jaden was waiting. How did it go? He asked anxiously. Not well, I admitted. He's not backing down. Jaden paced the room, fists clenching and unclenching. We can't keep living like this, Alina. Maybe we should take a break. Let things cool down. I felt like the floor had been pulled out from under me. What are you saying? I'm saying I need time to think, Jaden said, his voice breaking. We're under so much pressure. I can't think straight. Jaden, please, I pleaded. Don't let them win. We can fight this together. I don't know if I can, he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Alina. He left that night, deciding to stay at a friend's place for a while. As the door closed behind him, I felt a cold, numb sensation creeping over me. Warren's plan was working, and I was losing the one person who mattered most. Jaden's decision to take a break hit me like a ton of bricks. Each day without him was a struggle. The house felt empty and cold, every corner reminding me of what I was losing. I barely slept, my mind racing with thoughts about Warren and Leonard's relentless scheming. One evening, unable to sit idle any longer, I decided to dig through my own files and emails, hoping to find something to counter Warren and Leonard's lies. Hours passed with nothing. Frustration gnawed at me until I stumbled upon an email chain that caught my attention. Sent to an unfamiliar address, it was filled with malicious intent and vivid descriptions of plans to eliminate me from Jaden's life. My heart raced as I realized the sender was Leonard, and the recipient was Warren. The messages detailed their relentless plot to sow discord and manipulate Jaden. I immediately called Mallory, my voice shaking. Mallory, I found something. You have to see it. We met at a coffee shop, and I showed her the emails on my laptop. Her face paled as she read through them. This is insane, Alina. They're worse than I thought. We have to show this to Jaden, I said. Mallory nodded. Let me reach out to him. Maybe he'll listen to me. Later that evening, Mallory texted me, Jaden's coming over. Be ready. When Jaden arrived, his face was tense and tired. Mallory said you found something? I nodded, leading him to the kitchen where my laptop was set up. It's better if you see for yourself. He read the emails, his expression shifting from confusion to shock, then to a slow-burning rage. These are from Dad and Leonard? About you? Yes, I said softly. They've been manipulating you, Jaden. This is proof. Jaden's hands trembled as he closed the laptop. All this time, I can't believe they would go this far. I took a step towards him. Jaden, we can fight this together. But you need to see what they're really doing. He nodded, his eyes brimming with determination. You're right. We need to confront them. This can't go on. We decided to face Warren and Leonard together, arranging a meeting at Warren's house. Mallory insisted on coming along for support. The tension as we walked into the house was palpable. Warren and Leonard sat in the living room, looking smug and confident. So you've come to your senses, Jaden, Warren sneered, playing on his lips. Warren asked, a sneer playing on his lips. Jaden's voice was firm. We know what you've been doing, Dad, manipulating, trying to tear us apart. Warren's expression didn't falter. I've done what's best for you, Jaden. Jaden slammed the laptop on the table, opening the incriminating emails. This is what's best for me? Lies and manipulation? Leonard leaned forward, his smile fading. You don't understand. No, you don't understand, Jaden interrupted. You've lost my trust, and you won't get it back. Warren's eyes narrowed. Elena is poisoning you against us. This is your doing, not hers, Jaden shot back. We're done with your games. Mallory finally stepped forward, her voice steady. I support Jaden and Elena. You two are toxic, and it's time we all saw it. Warren's face contorted with fury, but he said nothing. Jaden took my hand, his grip reassuring. We're leaving, and we won't be coming back. As we walked out, I felt a surge of relief. Warren and Leonard's hold on Jaden had broken, and together we were stronger. It wouldn't be easy, but we had exposed their deceit. The road to healing had begun, and for the first time in weeks, I felt hopeful about the future. Jaden and I spent the next few days gathering our strength. We knew the confrontation had just begun. Armed with the truth, we set a plan in motion to reveal Warren and Leonard's deceit to the entire family. We decided to call a family meeting at Jaden's parents' house, ensuring that the extended family would be present. Jaden invited everyone, making it clear that this was a matter of urgency. Warren and Leonard might have thought they could manipulate the situation, but this time we would control the narrative. The family gathered in the large living room, filled with murmurs of confusion and curiosity. Warren and Leonard sat in their usual chairs, their faces steely and unreadable. Jaden stood beside me, gripping my hand for support. Thank you all for coming, Jaden began, his voice strong. We have something important to discuss. For weeks, Elena and I have been victims of lies and manipulation orchestrated by my father and uncle. A murmur ran through the room. Warren leaned forward, a sneer on his face. This again, Jaden? Haven't we had enough of this nonsense? It's not nonsense, Jaden replied, his voice unwavering. He turned to Mallory, who stood up and began playing the emails on the big screen. Silence fell over the room as Leonard's and Warren's voices filled the room, their cold, calculating words undeniable. The shock on the family's faces was evident, and whispers of disbelief spread like wildfire. How could you do this? Jaden's aunt muttered, glaring at Warren. Warren's face turned red with rage. You think this proves anything? It's all taken out of context. Context, Jaden's voice rose. You manipulated and lied to push Elena out of my life. This isn't love or protection, it's control and deceit. Leonard tried to interject. We were protecting the family, Jaden. Sometimes harsh measures are necessary. Harsh measures? Mallory snapped. This is cruelty, plain and simple. Jaden's mother, Diana, stood up, her face pale. Warren, is this true? Have you been lying to all of us? Warren looked around, his confidence wavering. I did what I thought was right, but Jaden, he's blinded by her. She's not one of us. Jaden's voice shook with emotion. Elena is more family to me than you've ever been since this started. She didn't deserve any of this. Warren stuttered, but Jaden cut him off. Enough. I'm done with your lies. This ends now. The room was tense, every eye on Warren and Leonard. Jaden turned to the family. From this day forward, we cut ties with them. Their influence ends here. We rebuild without lies. Diana, with tears in her eyes, nodded. I'm so sorry, Jaden, Elena. I didn't know it had gone this far. Jaden squeezed my hand. We're moving forward as a family, but only with those who support us, who value truth. Warren stood up, his face contorted with fury. You're making a big mistake, Jaden. No, Jaden replied, his voice steady. For the first time, I'm making the right choice. As Warren and Leonard left the room, the weight of their influence seemed to lift. The family began to rally around us, offering apologies and support. Jaden drew me close, his arm around my shoulders. We did it, I whispered, feeling a sense of relief washing over me. Jaden nodded, his eyes determined. This is just the beginning. Together, we can face anything. The reckoning had come, and while the road ahead was still uncertain, we knew we'd taken the first step towards a future free from deceit. With every obstacle overcome, our bond grew stronger, proving that love and truth would always prevail. As the door closed behind Warren and Leonard, a heavy silence descended on the room. The air felt charged with the weight of everything that had happened. Jaden and I stood together, still processing the enormity of what we'd just done. Diana approached us, her face lined with worry. Jaden, Alina, I had no idea they were capable of this. I'm so sorry. Jaden sighed, his shoulders relaxing slightly for the first time in weeks. It's not your fault, Mom, but we need to move forward. Mallory stepped in, her eyes resolute. Rebuilding won't be easy, but we can do it, together. Jaden nodded. First, we need to make sure Warren and Leonard can't harm us any further. Their influence needs to end, both in the family and in the business. I turned to Jaden, my voice steady. We will, Jaden. We'll figure this out. The next morning, Jaden and I began the process of distancing ourselves from Warren's business. It was clear that to reclaim our lives, we needed to establish independence. I decided to dive back into my marketing career, focusing on what I had built for myself before all this chaos. Meanwhile, Jaden started exploring opportunities to start his own enterprise. Each evening, we sat together, discussing ideas, plans, and the future we envisioned without the shadow of Warren's control. One late afternoon, Jaden came home, his face lit with excitement. I found a potential investor for a new project. This could be a fresh start for us. I smiled, proud of his determination. That's amazing, Jaden. Let's make it happen. We met the investor, an old friend of Jaden's who was eager to support his vision. As plans solidified, it felt like a burden lifting off our shoulders, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. Amidst all this, one evening, Diana called, her voice filled with a newfound resolve. Jaden, I think it's time we talked about your father. I need to explain why he's become so bitter. Jaden and I visited Diana the following weekend. She welcomed us into the home that had seen so much turmoil, her expression both sad and determined. Warren wasn't always like this, Diana began, her voice soft. There was a time when he was full of hope, just like you, Jaden, but life has a way of hardening people. What changed him? Jaden asked, leaning forward. Diana took a deep breath. It was Leonard's return from overseas. Warren had always felt a duty to protect the family, but Leonard's influence made it worse. He stirred up old insecurities, convinced Warren that everyone was out to take from him. It turned him into this controlling figure obsessed with power. I listened, feeling a pang of empathy despite everything Warren had done. That kind of fear can destroy people, I said quietly. Yes, Diana agreed. Doubt and fear consumed him, and he took it out on those he should have loved the most. Jaden's face was filled with a mix of anger and sadness. He's hurt us all so much. I know, Diana said, tears in her eyes, but understanding his past doesn't excuse his actions. It just helps us see the full picture. Jaden nodded, reaching for my hand. We won't let his past dictate our future. We're carving out our own path now. In the weeks that followed, Jaden's new venture began to take shape. We poured our energy into creating a future built on trust and mutual support. Mallory, freed from Warren's oppressive influence, found her own voice, contributing to the family in ways she'd been too scared to before. Despite the confrontation and the revelations, healing had begun. Warren and Leonard's fall from power left a void, but it also provided an opportunity for growth. We were no longer defined by the bitterness that had once threatened to tear us apart. As Jaden and I stood together, looking towards the horizon, we knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But for the first time, it felt like our own. And that made all the difference. Warren's fall was more profound than anyone could have anticipated. Once a titan of influence, he now found himself ostracized by both his immediate and extended family. Word of his and Leonard's manipulations spread quickly, turning allies into skeptics and friends into critics. Jaden and I watched from a distance as Warren's once impenetrable empire began to crumble. He had alienated everyone who mattered, and now he was paying the price. It was hard not to feel a mix of satisfaction and pity. One evening, as we were settling into our new routine, Jaden received an unexpected call from his mother. Her voice was heavy with concern. Jaden, it's your father. He's not handling this well. Can you come over? Jaden looked at me, uncertainty in his eyes. Should we go? I nodded. He's still your father. Let's see what's going on. When we arrived, Diana led us into the living room where Warren sat, staring blankly at the wall. His once sharp and commanding demeanor was now a shadow of its former self. Jaden, Alina, Warren said, his voice lifeless. I suppose you've come to see the defeated king. Dad, Jaden began, almost pleading. This didn't have to be this way. You pushed everyone away. Warren's eyes hardened momentarily. I did what I thought was right, for the family. And look where it's gotten you, I said, unable to keep the bitterness out of my voice. You hurt so many people, including your own children. Diana touched Warren's arm gently. It's time to let go of this thirst for control, Warren. It's destroying you. For a moment, the old Warren seemed to surface, his eyes flashing with the stubborn pride that had defined him for so long. But it faded quickly, leaving behind a man broken by his own machinations. Jaden took a deep breath. Dad, you need to understand that we're moving forward without your influence. We're creating our own lives now. Warren looked at Jaden, truly seeing him for perhaps the first time in years. I just wanted to protect you. By manipulating and deceiving us? Jaden shook his head. That's not protection, Dad. That's control, and it's over. We left Warren's house that evening with a sense of finality. The old power structures had fallen, and in their place, we were building something new and honest. Mallory, emboldened by the changes, finally stepped out of the shadows. She openly supported Jaden, cutting ties with the toxic patriarchy that had held them captive for so long. Her transformation was inspiring, and it further solidified our resolve to pursue a life free from manipulation. Jaden's new business started to gain traction, and my career continued to flourish. We found a balance, supporting each other in ways that strengthened our relationship. Trust and communication became the cornerstones of our lives, our bond reaffirmed through every challenge we faced. One crisp autumn afternoon, Jaden and I sat in our new home, planning our future. The past months had been a whirlwind, but we had emerged stronger and more united. Do you think he'll ever change? I asked, referring to Warren. Jaden looked thoughtful. I don't know, but we can't wait around for him to. We have our own lives to lead. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of gratitude and peace. We've come a long way, Jaden. Yes, we have, he agreed, taking my hand in his. And we'll keep moving forward, no matter what. The journey had been tumultuous, but we had found our footing. We reclaimed our lives from under Warren's shadow, turning manipulation and deceit into lessons of resilience and hope. The future was ours, a tapestry of love, trust, and unbreakable unity, free from the venom of a bitter lineage. Together, we had triumphed. I jolted awake, my heart pounding in my chest. The recurring nightmare of finding that damning email on Aaron's laptop had become all too familiar lately. As I reached for my phone to check the time, the harsh glow of the screen confirmed it was well past midnight. Aaron still wasn't home. I sighed deeply, the frustration and loneliness I'd grown accustomed to settling in once more. When had our marriage taken such a sharp turn? Aaron used to be the most attentive and loving husband a woman could ask for. But over the past few years, his obsession with work had consumed him, leaving me to fend for myself more often than not. Memories of our early years together flooded my mind. The way he used to look at me, his eyes sparkling with adoration, the spontaneous weekend getaways and romantic gestures that made my heart flutter. Those were the moments that had made me fall head over heels for him. The moments that had convinced me he was my soulmate. But lately, those moments had become few and far between. Aaron's constant business trips and late nights at the office had driven a wedge between us, and the distance only seemed to be growing wider with each passing day. As I lay there staring at the ceiling, I couldn't help but wonder if the suspicious email I'd found was just the tip of the iceberg. Was Aaron really working as hard as he claimed, or was there something or someone else occupying his time? The thought made my stomach churn, but I couldn't ignore the nagging suspicion any longer. I had to know the truth, no matter how painful it might be. With a heavy heart, I rose from bed and made my way to the home office. Aaron's laptop sat closed on his desk, as if taunting me with the secrets it held. I took a deep breath and opened it, my fingers trembling as I navigated to his email inbox. There it was, the message that had set off this whirlwind of doubt and mistrust. A innocuous-looking email from an unknown sender, but with a subject line that made my blood run cold. Can't wait to see you again, my love. I felt the tears welling up in my eyes as I read and reread those words, each time feeling like a knife to my heart. Was this proof of Aaron's infidelity? Or was I simply letting my insecurities get the better of me? One thing was certain, I couldn't let this go unanswered any longer. As soon as Aaron walked through that door, I was going to demand answers, and if he was lying to me, there would be hell to pay. The sound of Aaron's key turning in the lock sent a jolt through my body. I quickly minimized the incriminating email and composed myself, my heart racing in anticipation of the confrontation to come. As he stepped through the door, Aaron's eyes went wide with surprise at seeing me still awake. "Marta, what are you doing up so late?" I fixed him with a stern glare, the anger and hurt I'd been bottling up for months finally bubbling to the surface. "Where have you been, Aaron? And don't give me that working late excuse again." He sighed, running a hand through his thinning hair. "I told you it's this big project I'm overseeing. It's a make-or-break deal for the company. And yet you have time to send flirtatious emails to other women?" I spat, slamming the laptop lid shut with a bang. Aaron's face drained of color. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb with me," I shouted, shoving the printout of the damning email in his face. "Who is she, Aaron? Tell me right now, or so help me." He recoiled, holding up his hands in a placating gesture. Whoa, calm down. It's not what you think, I swear." I scoffed, feeling the tears of betrayal stinging my eyes. "Really? Then what is it, Aaron? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been carrying on an affair behind my back." Aaron's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I thought I saw a flicker of guilt cross his features. But just as quickly, it was gone, replaced by a mask of indifference. "You're overreacting, Marta. It's just a harmless flirtation, nothing more." "Harmless?" I echoed, my voice dripping with disbelief. "How can you stand there and lie to my face like that?" He sighed again, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Look, I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression, but I promise you there's nothing going on. This project has just been incredibly stressful, and sometimes I let off a little steam by flirting online. It doesn't mean anything." I stared at him, searching his eyes for any hint of sincerity, but all I found was a cold but detached gaze that chilled me to the bone. In that moment, I realized that the man standing before me was a stranger, a far cry from the loving, attentive husband I had once known. "You know what, Aaron?" I said, my voice low and trembling with barely contained fury. "I don't believe a word you're saying, and if you think I'm just going to sit back and let you continue to disrespect me and our marriage like this, you've got another thing coming." Aaron's brow furrowed, and for a brief moment I thought I saw a flicker of concern in his eyes. But it was gone in an instant, replaced by that same infuriating nonchalance. "Marta, please," he said, reaching out to touch my arm. "Don't do anything rash. We can work through this, I promise." But as I jerked away from his grasp, I knew in my heart that there was no going back. The trust that had once been the foundation of our relationship was shattered beyond repair, and no amount of empty promises could fix it. "Save it, Aaron," I spat, turning on my heel and heading for the bedroom. "I'm done listening to your lies. From now on, you're going to have to face the consequences of your actions." As I slammed the door behind me, cutting off any further protest from Aaron, a single thought ran through my mind. If he thought this was over, he had no idea what was coming. The shrill ring of my phone jolted me from my restless slumber. I squinted at the caller ID. It was my older sister, Beth. "Hello?" I croaked, my voice still thick with sleep. "Marta, it's me. I'm sorry for calling so early, but I just had a feeling something was wrong," Beth said, her tone laced with concern. I sighed deeply, the weight of the previous night's confrontation with Aaron settling back onto my shoulders. "You could say that." There was a brief pause on the other end of the line. "It's Aaron, isn't it? What did that bastard do this time?" Despite the gravity of the situation, I couldn't help but crack a small smile at Beth's protective nature. She had never been Aaron's biggest fan, always claiming there was something off about him that she couldn't quite put her finger on. "I found an email on his laptop," I began, the words catching in my throat. "It was from some woman calling him my love and saying she couldn't wait to see him again." Beth let out a low whistle. "Wow, he's not even trying to hide it anymore, is he? That slimy son of a bitch." I shook my head, even though she couldn't see it. I confronted him about it last night, but he just brushed it off as harmless flirtation. Like that's supposed to make it okay? Of course he did. Beth scoffed. Men like Aaron think they can get away with anything. They lie and cheat and manipulate, and then expect us to just roll over and take it. Her words struck a chord deep within me, fanning the flames of anger and resentment that had been simmering since my discovery. She was right. I had spent far too long letting Aaron walk all over me, making excuses for his behavior while he carried on without a care in the world. Well, not this time, I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. I'm not going to just sit back and let him continue to disrespect me like this. There was a pause, and then Beth spoke again, her tone slightly softer. What are you going to do, sis? I took a deep breath, the beginnings of a plan formulating in my mind. For starters, I'm going to gather more evidence. If he thinks he can just sweep this under the rug with a few empty promises, he's got another thing coming. That's my girl, Beth said approvingly. You document every little thing, every shady email, every suspicious phone call. Build an airtight case against that lying snake. I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of determination coursing through my veins. And that's just the beginning. By the time I'm through with him, Aaron is going to wish he never laid eyes on that other woman. Beth let out a low chuckle. Atta girl. Give him hell, Marta. He deserves every bit of it and more. As I hung up the phone, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For too long I had been the victim, the dutiful wife pushed aside and disrespected by her unfaithful husband. But no more. From that moment on, the tables were turned, and Aaron was the one who would be made to pay for his transgressions. With a newfound sense of purpose, I got to work, meticulously documenting every shred of evidence I could find. Phone records, credit card statements, anything that could shed light on the depths of Aaron's betrayal. And as the incriminating trail grew longer, so too did my thirst for vengeance. Because at the end of the day, there was one thing I knew for certain. Aaron Thompson was going to get exactly what was coming to him, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. Over the next few weeks, I became a woman possessed, consumed by the singular goal of exposing Aaron's infidelity once and for all. Every spare moment was dedicated to tracking his movements, scouring through phone records and credit card statements for any shred of evidence that could shed light on his betrayal. And slowly but surely, the pieces began to fall into place. Late-night calls to an unknown number, charges for fancy dinners and hotel rooms that certainly weren't for business purposes. It was all there, right in front of me, a damning paper trail that left no doubt in my mind that Aaron had been carrying on an affair behind my back. But it wasn't until I stumbled across a series of flirtatious text messages that the full picture finally came into focus. The woman's name was Clara Evans, a 30-year-old project coordinator at Aaron's firm. And from the looks of things, she and Aaron had been involved in a torrid affair for quite some time. The messages made my stomach churn. The pet names, the suggestive language, the blatant disregard for the sanctity of our marriage. It was all there in black and white, a brutal reminder of just how little Aaron seemed to care about me or our vows. As I sat there, staring at the damning evidence before me, a wave of anger and humiliation washed over me. How could he do this to me? To us? After everything we'd been through together, how could he so callously throw it all away for some cheap fling with a woman half his age? In that moment, something inside me shifted. The hurt and betrayal I'd been feeling gave way to a burning desire for revenge, a primal need to make Aaron pay for his transgressions in the most public and humiliating way possible. And that's when the idea struck me. I knew from the messages that Aaron and Clara had plans to meet up for a romantic dinner that weekend at a fancy restaurant downtown. The perfect setting for a little surprise reunion, I thought to myself with a wicked grin. The next few days were a blur as I meticulously planned every last detail. I booked a reservation at the restaurant under a fake name, ensuring I'd be seated close enough to Aaron and Clara's table to cause maximum disruption. I even went so far as to have a new dress tailored. A slinky little number that was sure to turn heads and make Aaron realize exactly what he was throwing away. Finally, the night of reckoning arrived. As I stepped into the restaurant, my heart was pounding with a heady mix of nerves and anticipation. But the moment I spotted Aaron and Clara sitting in a cozy corner booth, all traces of doubt melted away, replaced by a steely resolve. "Well, well, well," I announced loudly, striding toward their table with purpose. Isn't this just a cozy little date night? Aaron's head whipped around, his eyes going wide with shock and fear as he registered my presence. Marta, what are you doing here? I fixed him with a withering glare, reveling in the way he seemed to shrink under my gaze. Oh, I think you know exactly why I'm here, Aaron. This little charade of yours has gone on long enough. Clara, for her part, looked equally stunned, her perfectly made-up face twisted into an expression of abject horror. Aaron, what's going on? Who is this woman? I let out a derisive snort. I'm his wife, you little homewrecker, the one he's been lying to and cheating on for God knows how long. The restaurant had gone deathly silent, all eyes trained on our dramatic confrontation. Somewhere in the back of my mind I knew I should feel embarrassed, ashamed at causing such a public spectacle. But in that moment, I couldn't bring myself to care. Aaron was the one who should be ashamed of the lies, the betrayal, the utter disrespect he'd shown me and our marriage. And I was going to make sure the whole world knew it. This little date ends tonight, I spat, leaning in close so only he and Clara could hear me. You want to know what real karma looks like, Aaron? You're about to find out. The aftermath of my dramatic confrontation at the restaurant played out like a surreal blur. Aaron and Clara had scrambled to gather their things and beat a hasty retreat, their faces twisted in matching expressions of shock and humiliation. As for me, I simply stood there, reveling in the stunned silence that had fallen over the dining room, savoring the sweet taste of revenge. It wasn't until I got home that the full weight of what I'd done finally hit me. As the adrenaline wore off, a nagging sense of doubt began to creep in. Had I gone too far? Would Aaron ever be able to forgive me for such a public shaming? I shook my head, steeling my resolve. No, I couldn't afford to second-guess myself now. Aaron was the one who had brought this upon himself with his lies and infidelity. If anything, he should be grateful I hadn't done worse. Still, when he finally stumbled through the door a few hours later, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of apprehension. His face was pale, his eyes haunted, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Marta, he began, his voice little more than a hoarse whisper, what you did tonight, I don't even know what to say. I fixed him with a cold, hard stare. You don't have to say anything, Aaron. I think my actions spoke loud and clear. He winced, as if my words had physically struck him. I know, and I deserved every bit of that humiliation. But please, you have to believe me when I say that Clara means nothing to me. It was just a fling, a moment of weakness that I deeply regret. I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. Do you really expect me to buy that? After everything you've put me through, all the lies and the sneaking around? Aaron's shoulders slumped, and for a moment he looked utterly defeated. You're right, I don't deserve your trust or your forgiveness. But I swear to you, Marta, from the bottom of my heart, I will spend every day making it up to you if you'll just give me another chance. His words hung heavy in the air, and for a brief moment, I actually found myself considering his plea. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memory of the man I had once loved, wanted desperately to believe that he could change, that we could somehow find our way back to the happiness we'd once shared. But then another voice, sharper and more insistent, cut through the haze of doubt. This was just another one of his lies, another empty promise designed to lull me into complacency while he continued his despicable behavior behind my back. Well, not this time. You know what, Aaron? I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. I think I will give you another chance. His head snapped up, his eyes shining with a glimmer of hope. Really? Oh, Marta, thank you. You won't regret this, I swear. I held up a hand, cutting off his effusive gratitude. Don't thank me just yet. This is your one and only chance to come clean, to tell me everything about your affair with Clara and any other indiscretions you might have been hiding from me, and if I catch you in even the smallest lie, so help me God, you'll wish you'd never been born. Aaron visibly paled, but to his credit, he didn't back down. You have my word, Marta. No more lies, no more secrets. I'll tell you everything. I swear it. I nodded, fixing him with a hard stare. Good. Then you'd better start talking. And Aaron, I added, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, don't leave anything out, because I promise you I will find out eventually. And when I do, there will be hell to pay. As Aaron began to spill his sordid tale, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. He might think he was being given a second chance, but in reality, this was just the calm before the storm. Because no matter what he said, no matter how convincingly he begged for forgiveness, I knew in my heart that our marriage was already dead. Aaron had made his choice, and now it was time for him to face the consequences, and I would be the one to deliver them. In the days following Aaron's tearful confession, I did my best to play the part of the forgiving wife, nodding along as he laid out his grand plans for rebuilding our trust and making amends. But on the inside, I was already plotting my next move. True to his word, Aaron had come clean about the sordid details of his affair with Clara, but what he didn't know was that I had already set the wheels in motion for a far more sinister revenge, one that would make his indiscretions with that little homewrecker seem like child's play. It was Ethan, my old friend from college, who had first tipped me off. A private investigator by trade, he owed me a favor after I'd helped him out of a jam a few years back. And when I reached out to him about digging into Clara's background, what he uncovered was a tangled web of lies and deception that went far deeper than any of us could have imagined. Turned out, Clara's fling with Aaron was about more than just satisfying her twisted desires. No, this was a calculated move, a long con designed to bleed my husband's company dry from the inside out. She's been embezzling funds for months, Ethan explained, sliding a thick manila envelope across the table towards me. Funneling money into offshore accounts, using Aaron's access codes and inside knowledge to cover her tracks. I felt my blood run cold as I flipped through the damning evidence. Bank statements, wire transfer records, all of it meticulously documented and irrefutable. But how? How could she possibly have gotten her hands on that kind of sensitive information? Ethan shrugged, his expression grim. Your guess is as good as mine, but from what I can tell, she's been playing Aaron like a fiddle this whole time, using their affair as a way to keep him blind to her real motives. A wave of nausea washed over me as the full weight of Clara's deception hit me. Not only had the little snake been sleeping with my husband, but she'd also been using him as an unwitting pawn in her twisted game, putting his career and reputation on the line, all for her own selfish gain. In that moment, any lingering shred of sympathy or pity I might have felt for Aaron vanished, replaced by a burning desire to see him, and Clara, get exactly what they deserved. We have to take this to the authorities, I said, my voice trembling with barely contained rage. Get that bitch arrested and make sure Aaron gets dragged down with her for aiding and abetting her crimes. Ethan nodded grimly. You got it. I'll make sure this evidence gets into the right hands, anonymously, of course. Can't have anyone tracing it back to us. I nodded, a grim smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. Of course. We'll let the wheels of justice do their work for now. But make no mistake, Ethan, by the time this is all over, Clara and Aaron are going to wish they'd never crossed me. As I left Ethan's office, I could already feel the weight of Aaron's deception lifting from my shoulders, replaced by a sense of grim satisfaction. For too long I had been the victim, forced to suffer the humiliation and heartbreak of his betrayal in silence. But not anymore. Now the tables had turned, and it was Aaron's turn to face the consequences of his actions. And this time, there would be no second chances, no empty promises or tearful apologies. This time, he was going to learn the true meaning of karma, and I was going to be the one to deliver it. The days following Ethan's revelation about Clara's embezzlement scheme were some of the most tense and emotionally charged of my life. As much as I tried to maintain a facade of normalcy around Aaron, the simmering fury and resentment I felt towards him made it nearly impossible. Every time I looked at him, I saw not the man I had once loved, but a pathetic fool who had been so blinded by his own selfish desires that he'd allowed himself to be used as a pawn in Clara's twisted game. The thought of it made my skin crawl. Still, I knew I had to keep my composure, at least for the time being. Ethan had assured me that the evidence he'd uncovered would be more than enough to bring Clara's crimes to light, but we needed to bide our time and let the authorities do their work. Of course, that didn't stop Clara herself from trying to worm her way out of the impending disaster. About a week after my meeting with Ethan, I received a frantic call from the little snake herself, practically begging me to meet with her in private. "Please, Marta," she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. "I know you must hate me after everything that's happened, but I swear I never meant for things to go this far." I scoffed, barely able to contain my disgust. "Save it, Clara. I know all about your little embezzlement scheme and how you've been using my husband as your own personal patsy." There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line, and for a moment I thought she might try to deny the accusations. But then, in a small, defeated voice, she spoke again. "So that's what this is all about," she murmured. "I should have known Ethan would come crawling back to you eventually." I felt a surge of satisfaction at the realization that she knew the jig was up. "That's right, Clara. Your little game is over, and you're going to pay for what you've done, both to me and to Aaron." There was a pause, and then she let out a bitter laugh. "Aaron? Are you kidding me? That spineless worm was just as complicit in all of this as I was. He knew exactly what was going on, and he was more than happy to turn a blind eye as long as he got to keep sticking his pistache." "Watch your mouth," I snarled, cutting her off mid-sentence. "Aaron might be a lying, cheating scumbag, but he's still my husband. And trust me, he'll get what's coming to him too." Clara let out a derisive snort. "Yeah, right, like he'll ever face any real consequences for his actions. Men like him always seem to skate by, while the rest of us take the fall." I could hear the bitterness and resentment dripping from her words, and for a brief moment, I almost felt a twinge of pity for her. Almost. "Well, not this time," I said, my voice taking on a steely edge. "I'll make sure you both get exactly what you deserve, one way or another." There was a long pause, and then Clara spoke again. Her tone resigned. "Fine. Do whatever you have to do. Just let me know when and where you want to meet. I at least owe you that much." I smiled grimly to myself, already formulating a plan. "Don't worry, Clara. I'll be in touch, and when I do, you'd better be ready to face the consequences of your actions, once and for all." As I hung up the phone, I couldn't help but feel a sense of grim satisfaction. The endgame was finally in sight, and soon both Clara and Aaron would learn the true meaning of karma, and I would be the one to deliver it. The weeks following Clara's arrest were a whirlwind of chaos and turmoil. As the sordid details of her embezzlement scheme came to light, the shockwaves reverberated through Aaron's company, leaving a path of destruction in their wake. At first, Aaron tried desperately to distance himself from the scandal, claiming ignorance and pleading his innocence. But as more evidence of his involvement surfaced, the illicit use of his access codes, the suspicious wire transfers, the damning paper trail that seemed to implicate him at every turn, it became increasingly clear that he was far from the unwitting victim he claimed to be. I watched from the sidelines as his once promising career went up in flames, his reputation dragged through the mud, and his professional life left in tatters. A part of me, the part that still clung to the memories of the man I had once loved, felt a twinge of sadness at seeing him brought so low. But that small flicker of sympathy was quickly extinguished by the knowledge of the depth of his betrayal, not just to me, but to the company he had sworn to serve faithfully. In the end, he had proven himself to be just as selfish and morally bankrupt as Clara, willing to sacrifice everything for the sake of his own twisted desires. As the dust began to settle and the legal proceedings against Clara moved forward, it became clear that Aaron would likely avoid any serious jail time, at least for the time being. The evidence of his direct involvement was simply too circumstantial, the prosecutors claimed, and without Clara's full cooperation, nailing him for aiding and abetting her crimes would be an uphill battle. I should have felt relieved, I suppose. After all, seeing the man I had once loved rot behind bars was never my intention. But as I watched him slink away from the courthouse, his head hung in shame and his once bright future reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hollow victory. Because as much as the authorities might have let him off easy, there was no escaping the fact that his life as he knew it was over. The lies, the betrayal, the utter disregard he had shown for me and our marriage, it had all caught up to him in the end, and now he would be forced to face the consequences for the rest of his days. A few weeks later, as I was packing up the last of my belongings in preparation for my move to a new city. A fresh start. Far away from the painful memories of our life together, there was a tentative knock at the door. I already knew who it would be before I opened it. "Marta," Aaron said, his voice barely above a whisper. He looked haggard, his once handsome features etched with lines of shame and regret. I wanted to apologize one last time, for everything. I regarded him coolly, feeling nothing but a hollow emptiness where the love and affection I had once felt for this man had resided. "Your apologies mean nothing to me now, Aaron. You made your choices, and you'll have to live with the consequences." He nodded, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I know, and I deserve every bit of it after the way I treated you. He trailed off, shaking his head. "I hope that someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I let out a bitter laugh. "Forgive you? Aaron, you're lucky I didn't have you thrown in jail alongside that little tramp you were so eager to risk everything for." A flicker of pain crossed his features, but he didn't argue. We both knew I was right. "Just go, Aaron," I said, my voice heavy with finality. "Go and try to pick up the pieces of the life you've ruined. As for me, I'm done. Our time together is over, and I'm ready to start fresh." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but then seemed to think better of it. With one last lingering look, he turned and walked away, disappearing from my life for good. As I watched him go, I felt an unexpected sense of peace wash over me. The long, arduous road to revenge was finally at an end, and while the journey had been painful, the satisfaction of seeing karma served made it all worth it in the end. A new chapter was beginning, I realized, one free from the lies and betrayal that had haunted me for so long. And as I took one last look around the empty house that had once been our home, I couldn't help but smile. Revenge might be bittersweet, but it was exactly what I needed to reclaim my life and move forward, stronger and more resilient than ever before. "Kayla, why do you look so lost? Are you okay?" Todd's warm breath mixed with the frosty air. His concern seemed genuine, but I could feel the tears threatening to spill. Forcing a smile, I answered, "Just thinking. Let's go home and enjoy the stew I've been preparing." As we walked, the city around us bustled in Christmas cheer. The streets were lined with twinkling lights and families enjoying the season. I clung to Todd's arm, dreading the evening ahead. Our apartment, though small, was cozy and warm. Todd shrugged off his coat and tossed it over the couch, then headed straight for the kitchen. He lifted the lid on the stew pot, inhaling deeply. "Smells good," he remarked, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. I nodded, placing freshly baked bread on the table. We sat down to eat, but the tension in the room was palpable. Todd's initial warmth had faded, replaced by a cold demeanor I recognized all too well. I focused on my bowl, hoping we could get through the meal without incident. "Did you see that new couple moving in next door?" Todd asked abruptly. Caught off guard, I nodded again. "They seemed nice," I said, trying to sound casual. "Seem nice?" Todd's voice hardened. "You talked to them without telling me first?" "I just said hello, Todd. It wasn't a big deal." I kept my voice calm, my hands nervously gripping my spoon. "It is a big deal. I told you to always tell me when you talk to people." He glared at me, and I felt a familiar chill creep in. His control over me had grown stronger over the years. I used to believe his intentions were protective, born out of love. But now, sitting across from him, I saw the truth, an illusion of perfection masking a man who thrived on power and control. After dinner, Todd retreated to the living room, leaving me to clean up. I could hear the TV blaring in the background, but I stayed in the kitchen, scrubbing dishes with a focus that helped numb my thoughts. The water was scalding, but I welcomed the pain. It was a distraction. "Kayla," Todd's voice cut through my trance. I quickly dried my hands and walked into the living room. He was on the couch, remote in hand, eyes glued to the screen. "Yes?" I asked softly. "Bring me a beer." I headed to the fridge, grabbed a can and handed it to him. He didn't look at me, his focus was solely on the game. I stood there for a moment, waiting for some acknowledgement, some sign that he saw me. But nothing came. I was invisible to him, a mere shadow in the background of his life. Finding my voice, I said, "I'm going to bed, Todd." He grunted in response, and I turned away, heading to our bedroom. As I lay in the dark, memories of happier times bubbled up. Nana's comforting words, her wisdom about finding happiness beyond the darkness. I clung to those memories tightly, using them as a shield against the creeping despair. With Nana's words echoing in my mind, I made a silent vow. Somehow, I would find my happiness. I wouldn't let this cold, controlling life define me. As I drifted off to sleep, the city's twinkling lights were now a distant memory, replaced by the suffocating walls of our apartment and the man who trapped me within them. Little did Todd know his grip was not as strong as he thought. And one day, he would learn that the hard way. No hot sauce? Seriously, Kayla? You can't even handle a simple grocery list. Todd's voice boomed through our small apartment, his face flushed with anger. I flinched, trying to keep my composure. I'm sorry, Todd, I must have forgotten. I'll get it tomorrow. Forget it. You always forget. What's the point of you if you can't do anything right? His words stung, each one a jab at my already bruised spirit. I nodded silently, refusing to let him see how his words cut me. Instead, I busied myself setting the table for breakfast. Todd stormed out of the kitchen, his footsteps heavy on the wooden floor. As I poured the coffee, Nana's voice echoed in my head, her comforting presence always a source of strength. You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness. I wished she was here now. I could almost see her sitting at the small round table, her kind eyes filled with wisdom. But those days were gone, and I was left to navigate this overwhelming loneliness. Todd's job kept him out of the apartment during the day, which was my only solace. I planned to visit Nana today, hoping her familiar scent of lavender and old books would offer some relief. In the afternoon, I grabbed my coat and headed to Nana's house, the cold air biting at my cheeks. Her home, a small, cozy haven, welcomed me with open arms. As I stepped inside, the warmth enveloped me, and for a brief moment, I felt safe. Kayla, there's my beautiful girl, Nana greeted me with a gentle hug. Come, sit down, have some tea. We sat at her modest kitchen table, the steam rising from our mugs. I watched Nana as she moved around, her frail frame a stark contrast to the powerhouse of strength she embodied. How's it going, dear? She asked, her eyes searching mine. I hesitated. It's been hard, Nana. Sometimes I feel so alone. Nana reached across the table, her hands gripping mine with surprising strength. I've always told you, Kayla, you'll face struggles, but you have a fire in you. You'll find happiness. Remember that. I nodded, absorbing her words like a sponge, desperate for any bit of hope. As we talked, memories of my childhood flooded back. Sundays spent baking cookies with Nana, her laughter filling the air. She was my rock, the one constant in a world spinning out of control. After a long afternoon of sharing stories and sipping tea, I felt lighter somehow. Nana's unwavering belief in me sparked a glimmer of hope. I hugged her tightly before leaving, her soft voice a whisper in my ear. Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming. Back at the apartment, the coldness hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Todd was sprawled on the couch, a beer in his hand, eyes glued to the TV screen. Where have you been? He demanded without looking up. Visited Nana, I replied, hanging my coat. Well, it's about time you got home. Make sure you don't forget the hot sauce tomorrow. I swallowed my frustration, nodding silently. As I prepared dinner, Nana's words played over in my mind, a silent chant to keep me going. Better days are coming, I told myself over and over, clinging to that flicker of hope. Todd's grip might be suffocating, but Nana's wisdom gave me strength. Somehow, I would find the courage to break free. One day, Todd would realize that his control was slipping, and my resilience would be his downfall. I awoke the next morning, feeling the weight of yesterday's visit to Nana still lingering. Her words cycled through my mind, giving me a faint sense of strength. But Todd's looming presence was a constant reminder of my reality. By midday, after completing my chores, I decided to head back to Nana's. Her home was my sanctuary, the only place where I felt any semblance of peace. I slipped out quietly, not wanting to wake Todd, who was sprawled on the couch, snoring lightly from last night's binge. Arriving at Nana's, I instantly felt calmer. She greeted me with her usual warmth, pulling me into a tight embrace. You look tired, dear. Come and sit down, she said, leading me to the kitchen. We settled at the table, and she poured us both a cup of tea. The familiarity of her actions was comforting. Nana, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, I admitted, tracing my finger along the edge of the cup, about facing struggles and finding happiness. Good. she replied, her eyes meeting mine with a knowing look. Remember, Kayla, you'll find happiness beyond the darkness. I nodded, feeling the resolve build up inside me. Thank you, Nana. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll find your way, Kayla, although the path might be hard. Feeling lighter, I left Nana's house and returned to our apartment. The weight of Todd's presence hit me immediately upon entering. He was awake now, sitting at the table with a scowl etched on his face. What took you so long? He demanded, his eyes narrowing. I was visiting Nana again, I explained, setting my bag down. You're always running off there. Maybe you should move in with her, he sneered. Ignoring his comment, I went to the kitchen to start dinner. The silence was thick, filled with unspoken tensions. I could feel Todd's eyes boring into my back as I prepared the meal. Later that evening, as we were eating, Todd's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and his demeanor shifted, a sly smirk appearing on his lips. Curiosity piqued, I watched as he typed something back, quickly and secretively. You seem happy, I noted, unable to mask the bitterness in my voice. I just got some good news from work, he replied nonchalantly, not looking up. After dinner, I cleaned up, my mind whirling with suspicions. Todd's secretive behavior had been growing, and my gut told me there was more to it than just work. As I lay in bed that night, Nana's words reverberated in my mind, offering a small but significant comfort. The path was undeniably hard, but I had to believe that happiness waited for me, somewhere beyond the turmoil. The next day, while Todd was at work, I decided to take a small step towards reclaiming my freedom. I visited a nearby real estate office, inquiring about small, affordable apartments. I didn't make any commitments, but gathering information was the first step towards my eventual escape. Returning home later that day, I felt a mixture of fear and empowerment. Todd was already back and met me with his usual chilly disposition. Where have you been? He snapped, his tone accusatory. Just running errands, I replied casually, refusing to meet his gaze. His eyes scanned my face, searching for any hint of defiance. Finding none, he retreated to his usual spot on the couch. I busied myself with mundane tasks, my mind buzzing with the possibilities that stretched ahead. Nana's words continued to echo in my mind, a beacon guiding me through the darkness. I wasn't sure how or when, but I knew that one day I would break free. And Todd would see just how strong I could be. The day started out normal. I was grocery shopping, crossing items off the list, trying to keep my mind focused. But a strange weariness had settled over me. I ignored it, convincing myself it was just the stress of everything weighing me down. As I reached for a box of cereal, a dizzy spell hit me hard. My vision blurred, the sounds around me became distant. Before I could react, everything went dark. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. The sterile smell filled my nostrils. A nurse noticed I was awake and rushed to my side. You're at St. Mary's Hospital, she explained softly. You fainted in the grocery store. We ran some tests. Confusion and fear churned within me. What tests? What did they find? The doctor walked in, carrying a clipboard. His expression was serious. Mrs. Smith, I'm Dr. Martin. We need to discuss your results. My heart pounded. What's wrong with me? Dr. Martin took a deep breath. Your blood work revealed an infection. It's an STD, Mrs. Smith, chlamydia. I stared at him, my world collapsing. That's impossible. I've only been with my husband. Dr. Martin looked at me with a mix of pity and concern. This type of infection typically spreads through sexual contact. It's important you inform your partner and seek treatment. Numbness washed over me as Dr. Martin continued talking, but his words became a distant echo. Todd. He had to be the source. I couldn't believe he betrayed me like this. Back at the apartment, Todd was sitting on the couch, half watching TV. I stormed in, my anger boiling over. Todd, we need to talk, I said, my voice shaking. He barely glanced at me. What now, Kayla? I took a deep breath, my hands trembling. I've never been with anyone else, Todd. Who did you give this to me from? Todd's head snapped up, his face turning pale. What are you talking about? The doctor found an STD, Todd, I said, my voice cracking. Chlamydia. Who else have you been sleeping with? He stood up, his eyes blazing. Are you accusing me of something? Who else would it be? I shouted back. I've only ever been with you. You did this to me. For a moment, Todd looked like he was going to deny it, but then his expression shifted to something colder. You know what, Kayla? Maybe if you weren't so useless at home, I wouldn't have needed someone else. The room spun around me. His words cut deeper than any knife. My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. You betrayed me, I whispered. Todd scoffed. Get over it, it's not the end of the world. But to me it felt like it was. Any hope I had clung to was shattered. The dream of a family, children, and a life full of love was obliterated in an instant. Get out of my sight, he spat, storming out of the room. I was left alone in the cold, empty apartment, my body racked with sobs. Nana's voice echoed softly in my mind, offering a small, fragile comfort amidst the tumult. Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming. As broken as I felt, a new resolve settled in my heart. Todd had taken much from me, but he wouldn't take my hope. One way or another I would break free from his grasp, and he would pay for every tear he forced me to shed. I'll obey you, Todd, but remember, you asked for this, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the kettle whistling on the stove. Todd paid no attention to my words, lost in his phone, his face illuminated by the screen's blue light. He smirked and shrugged, barely looking up. Good girl. Inside, I seethed with a mixture of rage and determination. His casual dismissal only fueled my drive. That night, as he slept peacefully, I quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the closet. I pulled down an old suitcase and began packing the essentials. I made sure to be quiet, each rustle of fabric sounding deafening in the silence of the night. The next few days, I tread carefully, making sure not to alert Todd to my plans. I stashed money away, small amounts here and there, enough to get me started once I left. I contacted a few friends I could trust, securing a place to crash temporarily. Every interaction with Todd became an act. My compliance was strategic. My silence was a weapon. It was all part of a plan he never saw coming. Did you remember the groceries? Todd asked one evening, not looking up from his dinner. Yes, I picked everything up, I replied, handing him the receipt without a second thought. Good, he muttered, his attention completely on the TV. His complacency disgusted me, but it also worked in my favor. That weekend, Todd had a work event he couldn't get out of. He left the apartment early, suited up and ready to impress. I watched from the window as his car pulled away. As soon as he was out of sight, I sprang into action. I pulled out the hidden suitcase from under the bed and added the final items. I grabbed the envelope of cash I had stashed behind a loose brick in the wall. Every move was made with precision, every step a part of my silent resolve. I had already secured a temporary place with my friend Jenny, who had been more than supportive when I confided in her. You can stay as long as you need, she had assured me over the phone, her voice calm and steady. With everything packed, I took a final look around the apartment. This place had held so much promise once. Now it was just a cage, suffocating and cold. My eyes landed on a photo of Todd and me from happier times. I picked it up, feeling the weight of lost dreams in my hands. Then, with a deep breath, I set it down gently on the coffee table and walked out the door. As I locked the door behind me, I felt a strange mixture of fear and relief. Fear of the unknown and relief from the oppressive life I was leaving behind. I hurried to meet the cab waiting for me at the entrance of our building. As we sped away, I couldn't help but glance back one last time. The building shrank from view, and with it, the remnants of my life with Todd. Arriving at Jenny's place, she greeted me with a warm hug. You're safe here, she reassured me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to believe her. As I settled into the guest room, Nana's words echoed in my mind. Stay strong, Kayla. Better days are coming. As I lay down that night, I felt a spark of hope bloom amidst my exhaustion. Todd had underestimated me greatly. He might have broken my heart, but my spirit was far from defeated. The real journey was just beginning, and this time I would be the one in control. Why didn't you tell me about the STD, Todd? Who else are you sleeping with? My voice cut through the quiet room like a knife as Todd entered our old childhood home, now vacant, except for the memories that clung to the walls. Todd's face twisted in shocked anger. How did you find out about this place? And what the hell are you talking about? I know everything, I replied, my tone steady, years of pent-up rage and betrayal boiling over. I've been recording our conversations, Todd. Every demeaning comment, every time you raised your voice. I have it all. For a moment, Todd's confidence wavered, but his arrogance quickly returned. You think anyone will believe you? You have no proof. You're just a desperate, scorned woman. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone, calmly pressing play on the audio files I had saved. Todd's venomous words filled the space, each one a piece of the puzzle that painted an unmistakable picture of his true nature. "They'll believe me," I said, my voice stronger now. "I've kept everything documented, and it's not just me, Todd. Others know too." His eyes widened, and for the first time I saw genuine fear. "What do you want, Kayla? Money? Apologies? None of this will change anything." "I'm not doing this for money or apologies," I stated. "I want you to face the consequences of your actions. You've hurt me, deceived me, and now it's time for you to pay." Todd clenched his fist, stepping closer. "You think you're tough now, Kayla? You think you can take me down? You're pathetic." Ignoring his attempt to intimidate me, I continued, "You're going to come clean. You're going to face everyone and tell them the truth about who you are." A cruel laugh escaped Todd's lips. "And if I don't, then I'll release these recordings. I've made sure they're in safe hands. You can't stop them from getting out," I replied, holding his gaze with unwavering determination. Todd's confidence shattered. He paced back and forth, running a hand through his hair. "You're bluffing." "Try me," I challenged. "We both know what's at stake." Todd's face contorted with rage, but he knew he was trapped. He couldn't risk losing everything he'd built on lies. "Fine," he spat out. "I'll meet with your people. But this isn't over, Kayla." I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my gaze. "Oh, it's just beginning, and remember, every step you take, I'll be there watching." He stormed out of the house, leaving me standing alone in the echo of his departure. My heart pounded, but I felt an overwhelming sense of justification. I had taken the first step toward reclaiming my life. As I walked out, the memories of our childhood home seemed to fade, replaced by the strength of my new resolve. Todd would soon learn that karma had a long reach, and his time of reckoning was at hand. The fight wasn't over, but for the first time, the odds were in my favor. As I headed back to Jenny's, the words Nana used to say echoed in my mind. "You'll face struggles, but you'll find happiness beyond the darkness." I was ready to face whatever came next, knowing the power of my own resilience. Todd's control over me was at its end, and the real battle was about to begin. "Your lies are finally catching up to you, Todd." "They know everything," I said with cold satisfaction, watching him squirm in the center of his office meeting room. Todd's mask of confidence cracked entirely in that moment. His eyes darted around the room, filled with his colleagues and his boss, Mr. Jenkins. They all wore expressions of shock and disbelief as the recordings of his verbal abuse played from the speakers. "What is this?" Mr. Jenkins demanded, his face turning red with anger. "This is not the man we thought we knew." Todd stumbled over his words, attempting to regain control. "This is private. This doesn't concern my work. Kayla, you have no right." I cut him off sharply. "You acted one way at home, Todd, but you can't hide anymore. Everyone sees the real you now." Sarah, one of Todd's close colleagues, stood up, her voice trembling with anger. "How could you, Todd? We trusted you. We thought you were one of us, but you've been living a lie." Todd's eyes narrowed, his attempts to gather sympathy faltering. "Sarah, you don't understand. This is all her doing. She's trying to ruin me." Mr. Jenkins raised a hand to silence Todd. "I think we've heard enough from you, Todd. Your behavior is absolutely unacceptable." "Kayla, thank you for bringing this to our attention." I nodded, my eyes never leaving Todd. "I'm not doing this out of spite. This is for everyone Todd has hurt, who might hurt in the future. This is about the truth." Todd's bravado faltered entirely. He turned to Mr. Jenkins, desperation creeping into his voice. "Please, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." Mr. Jenkins shook his head. "It looks exactly like what it is, Todd. You're suspended, effective immediately. We will review this thoroughly, but expect a termination, and legal charges might follow." The colleagues murmured in agreement, their trust in Todd completely shattered. Todd looked around the room, realizing that he had lost his allies, his grip on power slipping entirely. I took a step forward, my voice calm but firm. "It didn't have to come to this, Todd. But you chose to deceive and manipulate. Actions have consequences." His eyes met mine, filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "This isn't over, Kayla." A small, cold smile tugged at my lips. "Oh, it is, and it's only fitting." I walked out of the meeting room, feeling their eyes on me, but more importantly, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Todd's reign of terror was crumbling, and justice was on the horizon. As I exited the building, the fresh air hit my face and I took a deep, liberating breath. My phone buzzed, a message from Jenny. How did it go? I replied simply, "It's done." Nana's words came back to me once again, a comforting reminder of the path I had taken to get here. I knew there were still battles to fight, but the biggest one had just been won. Todd would face the fallout of his actions, and I would no longer be a victim. I walked away from that chapter of my life, feeling stronger and more resolved than ever. As I headed home, my new life, free from Todd's shadow, began to take shape. Better days were indeed coming, and I was ready to embrace every single one of them. I stood by the window, watching the snow gently blanket the streets outside. Christmas lights adorned the houses, casting a soft, inviting glow. The sounds of laughter and festive cheer floated through the air, filling me with warmth. Ethan stepped into the room, holding our daughter Emma in his arms. Her eyes sparkled with excitement as she pointed to the lights outside. "Look, Mommy, it's so pretty," I smiled, reaching out to stroke her hair. "Yes, Emma, it really is." Ethan placed Emma down, and she ran off to marvel at the Christmas tree. He came over and slipped an arm around my waist. "You okay?" he asked gently, his voice full of concern and love. "Better than okay," I replied, leaning into him. I never believed Nana when she said happiness would find me after the struggle, but here we are. Ethan kissed my forehead, a reassuring gesture that grounded me. "You've been through a lot, Kayla. I'm proud of you." The past year had been transformative. Todd's reputation had taken a massive hit, and he faced legal consequences for his actions. Meanwhile, I had built a new life with Ethan, whose kindness and love had healed so many of my wounds. Emma's laughter filled the room as she decorated the tree with sparkly ornaments. The sight of her pure joy brought a sense of completeness that I had longed for. I joined her, adding ornaments and tinsel, focusing on the present and the future filled with hope. Ethan picked up a small box from under the tree and handed it to me. "Open it," he urged, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. Curious, I unwrapped the box to find a delicate necklace with a locket. Inside was a picture of Emma and a tiny note in Ethan's handwriting, "Forever and always." Tears welled up in my eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "Thank you, Ethan. It's perfect." Emma ran over and gazed at the locket with wide eyes. "So pretty, Mommy," I smiled down at her. "Just like you, darling." Later that evening, as we sat down for dinner, the joy and love in the room were palpable. It was a striking contrast to the tense, suffocating atmosphere I had once known. Ethan held my hand under the table, a small but meaningful gesture that reminded me of how far I'd come. After dinner, we gathered around the fireplace. Ethan read Emma a Christmas story while I watched, feeling immense gratitude. The flames flickered, casting a warm glow, reminiscent of the light Nana always said would find me. Reflecting on the past, I realized that every struggle, every tear, and every moment of despair had led me to this. Nana's words had come to life in ways I couldn't have imagined back then. Happiness didn't just find me. I built it with the strength and resilience I never knew I had. As Ethan finished the story, Emma snuggled into my lap, her tiny hands gripping mine. "I love you, Mommy," she murmured sleepily. "I love you too, Emma. So much," I whispered back, my heart full. Ethan's eyes met mine over Emma's head, filled with love and pride. In his gaze, I saw the future, a future built on love, trust, and the promise of better days. Nana's prediction had come true. Beyond the darkness, I had found not just happiness, but a peace I had thought was lost forever. And with Ethan and Emma by my side, I knew we could overcome anything life threw our way. The new dawn was here, bringing with it all the joy, love, and laughter I had once feared impossible. The journey had been long and painful, but in the end, it was completely worth it. With Ethan and Emma, I was ready to embrace every beautiful moment life had to offer. I stood frozen, the world crumbling around me as I watched Derek's lips locked with Amanda's in a passionate embrace. My heart shattered into a million pieces, the betrayal cutting deeper than any knife ever could. "Derek, how could you? After all we've been through?" I choked out, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and utter devastation. Amanda pulled away from Derek, her red lips curled into a smug grin. "Oh, he's mine now, Lily. You're just outdated." Her words stung like venom, each syllable twisting the knife deeper into my soul. I had dedicated my life to this man, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions to support his career and raise our family. And this was how he repaid me, by throwing it all away for a young, vapid thing like Amanda. I should have seen the signs earlier. The late nights at the office, the unexplained expenses, the distant looks he'd give me when he thought I wasn't paying attention. But I had been too blinded by love and loyalty to notice the cracks forming in our once perfect marriage. "Get out," Derek spat, his eyes cold and unrecognizable. "You're making a scene." I wanted to scream, to cry, to hurl every insult and accusation I could muster at them both. But I found myself paralyzed, my throat constricted by the weight of my shattered hopes and dreams. With what little dignity I had left, I turned and walked away, each step feeling heavier than the last. As I made my way out of the office, I couldn't help but wonder where it had all gone wrong. Just that morning, I had awoken before dawn, as I did every day to prepare Derek's favorite breakfast and ensure his suit was pressed to perfection. It was a routine I had followed for decades, a labor of love that had once brought me joy. But now, as I looked back on the sacrifices I had made, the countless times I had put his needs before my own, I felt a bitter taste of regret lingering on my tongue. How could he do this to me? To us? As I stepped out into the cool morning air, the weight of his betrayal finally hit me full force. Tears streamed down my face, hot and unrelenting, as I made my way to the car. I had always prided myself on being a strong, resilient woman, but in that moment I felt utterly broken. The man I had loved and trusted with every fiber of my being had shattered my heart into a million pieces, and I didn't know if I would ever be able to put it back together again. The office became a battleground, with Amanda asserting her dominance like a lioness staking claim over her territory. Every interaction felt like a thinly veiled attack, her words laced with venom and hidden jabs. "Lily, darling, have you considered retiring?" she would say, her saccharine tone dripping with condescension. "You've worked so hard for so long. Don't you think it's time to let the younger generation take over?" I would force a tight-lipped smile, swallowing the bitter retorts that threatened to spill from my lips. But with each passing day, it became increasingly difficult to maintain my composure. Derek, once my unwavering ally, seemed to be under Amanda's spell. He would nod along with her suggestions, his eyes glazed over as if in a trance. It was as if the man I had loved and built a life with had been replaced by a stranger. "Did you see the new marketing campaign Amanda put together?" He would gush, completely oblivious to the way his words cut me like a knife. "She's a real visionary." I wanted to scream, to shake him, and remind him of the countless nights we had stayed up late, dreaming of building this business together. But the words stuck in my throat, replaced by a bitter taste of betrayal. Nights became a blur of loneliness and heartache. While Derek was out working late with Amanda, I would sit alone in our once happy home, surrounded by the ghosts of memories past. Flashes of our struggling years would haunt me, the countless sacrifices we had made, the dreams we had deferred, all in the hopes of building a better life for ourselves and our family. And now it felt like all of that had been for nothing. "You're being paranoid, Lily," Emma would say, her voice laced with concern. "Derek loves you. He would never do anything to hurt you." But the evidence was mounting, and no amount of reassurance could ease the gnawing doubt that had taken root in my heart. Unexplained expenses, late nights at the office, the way Derek's eyes would linger a little too long on Amanda's form, it all painted a picture that I could no longer ignore. And then the final blow came. It was a lavish office party, one that Derek and Amanda had planned without so much as a word to me. As I stood in the corner, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine, I watched as they moved through the crowd like a perfectly choreographed dance. Amanda's laugh rang out like a bell, her head thrown back in exaggerated mirth, and Derek, my Derek, looked at her with a hunger that I had never seen before. It was in that moment that the last shreds of my denial crumbled away, leaving me raw and exposed to the harsh reality of their betrayal. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating further and further into the shadows, until I could no longer bear the sight of their happiness at my expense. With tears streaming down my face, I slipped out of the party and into the cool night air, my heart shattered into a million pieces. Derek and Amanda's relationship became more brazen, as if they were flaunting their indiscretion for all to see. The once subtle glances and lingering touches gave way to outright public displays of affection that left me reeling. "You two make me sick," I spat one day, unable to hold back the bile rising in my throat. Amanda merely laughed, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on Derek's arm. "Oh, Lily, don't be bitter just because you're past your prime." Derek said nothing, his eyes downcast like a scolded child. It was as if he had become Amanda's puppet, dancing to her tune without a shred of remorse. The office became a battleground, with Amanda taking every opportunity to assert her dominance over me. She would casually undermine my decisions, questioning my judgment in front of clients and colleagues alike. "Lily, darling, are you sure that's the best approach?" she would say, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe we should let the younger, more innovative minds take the lead on this one." And Derek, the coward, would nod along, his silence cutting deeper than any words ever could. It was during one particularly heated exchange that the final blow came. Amanda had once again overstepped her boundaries, belittling me in front of the entire staff. "Face it, Lily, you're a relic of the past," she sneered. "It's time for you to step aside and let the new generation take over, starting with Derek." That was the final straw. Years of pent-up frustration and anger bubbled to the surface, and before I knew it, I was unleashing a torrent of words that I could never take back. "You think you're so special, Amanda?" I snarled, my voice trembling with rage. "You're nothing but a cheap, home-wrecking tramp who's using her looks to get ahead." The room fell silent, everyone's eyes trained on us like spectators at a gladiator match. Derek's face had drained of color, his mouth hanging open in shock. Amanda, for once, was speechless. Her perfectly sculpted mask of confidence had slipped, revealing the insecure, desperate woman beneath. In that moment, I felt a surge of power coursing through my veins. For too long, I had allowed myself to be diminished, to be made to feel insignificant in my own life. But no more. With a newfound sense of determination, I turned on my heel and stormed out of the office, leaving a trail of stunned silence in my wake. As I drove home, the adrenaline coursing through my veins gave way to a profound sense of clarity. I had spent too long living in Derek's shadow, sacrificing my own dreams and aspirations for the sake of his success. No longer. From that moment on, I vowed to take back control of my life, to reclaim the power that had been stripped away from me piece by piece. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a force within me that they could never hope to contain. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready for war. The extravagant office party was the final nail in the coffin of my shattered marriage. As I stepped into the lavishly decorated ballroom, the weight of Derek and Amanda's betrayal hit me like a ton of bricks. They were the center of attention, basking in the adoration of their colleagues and clients, like royalty holding court. Amanda's sequined dress clung to her body like a second skin, her perfectly coiffed hair and makeup a stark contrast to the haggard, defeated woman staring back at me in the mirror that morning. "Lily, darling, you made it," she exclaimed, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "We were starting to worry you wouldn't grace us with your presence." Derek remained silent, his eyes averting mine as if he couldn't bear to look at me. The coward. "Of course I wouldn't miss this celebration," I replied, forcing a tight smile that felt more like a grimace. As the night wore on, I found myself retreating to the fringes, nursing a lukewarm glass of wine as I watched Derek and Amanda work the room like seasoned performers. They were a well-oiled machine, finishing each other's sentences and basking in the adulation of their adoring fans. It was sickening. At one point, I caught Amanda's eye from across the room. Her perfectly painted lips curled into a smug grin, as if to say, "I won. He's mine now." I wanted to scream, to hurl my glass at her and wipe that smug expression off her face. But I knew that would only give her the satisfaction she craved. So I did the only thing I could. I left. I slipped out of the party unnoticed, my heart heavy with the weight of my shattered dreams. As I made my way to my car, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled forth, hot and unrelenting. It was over. Derek had made his choice, and it wasn't me. The drive to Emma's was a blur, the streetlights blending together in a haze of grief and betrayal. By the time I arrived, I was a shell of a woman, hollowed out and broken. Emma took one look at me and immediately ushered me inside, her arms enveloping me in a warm embrace as I sobbed uncontrollably. "It's over, Em," I choked out between gasps. "Derek, he chose her." Emma's face hardened, her eyes burning with a protective fury I had never seen before. "That bastard," she growled, her grip on me tightening. "I'll kill him." I shook my head, too drained to even entertain the thought of vengeance. "It's not worth it," I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. I need to get away from all of this." And so, with Emma's unwavering support, I packed what little belongings I had and moved into her spare room. It was a temporary solution, but it was the only thing keeping me afloat in the midst of my personal tsunami. In the days that followed, I became a ghost, a mere shadow of the woman I once was. I stopped returning Derek's calls, stopped going into the office, stopped caring about anything beyond the basic necessities of survival. It was as if I had retreated into a cocoon, shutting out the world and all its cruelties as I licked my wounds and tried to piece myself back together. But as the weeks turned into months, a fire began to ignite within me, a burning desire for retribution, for justice, for the sweet taste of revenge. Amanda and Derek may have thought they had won, but they had only awoken a sleeping giant, and I was determined to make them pay for every ounce of pain and humiliation they had inflicted upon me. The battle had only just begun. The fire that had been ignited within me burned brighter with each passing day, fueled by the sting of Derek and Amanda's betrayal. I knew that I couldn't let them get away with what they had done, not just to me, but to the life we had built together. It was Emma who first suggested seeking revenge. "They can't just treat you like that and get away with it," she fumed one night over glasses of wine that had become our nightly ritual. At first, I dismissed the idea, too consumed by my own pain and heartbreak to even entertain the thought of retaliation. But as the weeks dragged on and the humiliation of my public ousting sank in, a newfound determination took root. It was then that I reached out to Owen, an old high school friend who had always had a knack for storytelling and technology. If anyone could help me expose Amanda and Derek for the snakes they truly were, it was him. "So let me get this straight," Owen said, his brow furrowed as he nursed a beer across from me at our favorite dive bar. "You want to take down your lying, cheating husband and his mistress?" I nodded, my jaw set with grim resolve. "They think they've won, but they have no idea what's coming." A slow grin spread across Owen's face, his eyes twinkling with mischief. "All right, Lily. I'm in. Let's make these assholes pay." From that moment on, Owen became my co-conspirator, my partner in crime. We spent countless hours huddled over his laptop, scouring the internet for any shred of dirt we could find on Amanda's past. And boy, did we hit the jackpot. It turned out that Amanda was a serial homewrecker, leaving a trail of broken homes and shattered lives in her wake. She had a pattern, seducing wealthy, successful men, leeching off of them until they had nothing left, and then moving on to her next victim. "This is gold, Lily," Owen crowed, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he compiled our findings. "We're going to bury that bitch with her own past." With each new revelation, my thirst for vengeance grew stronger. I wanted the world to see Amanda for the manipulative, conniving snake that she truly was. And Derek? He was going to get a front-row seat to the destruction of his precious mistress. We started small, leaking snippets of information to local gossip blogs and forums, watching with glee as the whispers and rumors began to swirl. It was like throwing a match onto a pile of kindling, the flames of scandal licking at Amanda's carefully cultivated image. But it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see them burn. So we took it a step further, creating an anonymous website dedicated to exposing Amanda's sordid past. We posted screenshots of her past conquests' social media accounts, detailing the heartbreak and financial ruin she had left in her wake. And then we waited. At first, the reactions were muted, a few raised eyebrows, a few hushed whispers, but then, like a wildfire, the scandal took on a life of its own. Suddenly, Amanda's name was on everyone's lips, her once pristine reputation tarnished beyond repair. I could see the cracks beginning to form in her perfect facade, the strain of the mounting pressure wearing her down. And Derek? Well, he was finally starting to see the true nature of the woman he had risked everything for. As the fallout intensified, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was just the beginning, a mere taste of the retribution that was to come. Amanda and Derek had made the mistake of underestimating me, of thinking that I would simply roll over and accept their betrayal, but they were about to learn a valuable lesson. Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned. And I was just getting started. The fallout from our anonymous leaks was swift and merciless. Amanda's carefully curated image began to unravel at the seams, the skeletons in her closet finally coming to light. At first, she tried to brush it off, putting on a brave face and denying the allegations. But as more and more damning evidence surfaced, her defiant facade crumbled like a house of cards. It was during this time that I started receiving frantic calls from Derek, his once confident tone replaced by a desperate pleading. "Lily, you have to help me," he begged, his voice strained. "This whole thing is spiraling out of control. Amanda's passed. I had no idea." I couldn't help but revel in his misery, savoring the sweet taste of his comeuppance. "What's the matter, Derek?" I taunted. "Not so enamored with your precious Amanda anymore?" He fell silent, and I could almost hear the shame radiating through the phone. It was a delicious feeling, watching the man who had so callously discarded me squirm under the weight of his own mistakes. But as satisfying as it wasn't enough. I wanted more. I wanted to see Amanda brought to her knees to watch as her world crumbled around her. It was Owen who suggested taking things a step further, arranging a face-to-face confrontation that would force Amanda to confront the consequences of her actions. "Meet me at the old parking garage downtown," he texted me one night, the cryptic message sending a thrill of anticipation coursing through my veins. When I arrived, the dimly lit garage was deserted, save for a lone figure leaning against a sleek sports car. As I drew closer, the figure stepped into the light, and my breath caught in my throat. It was Amanda, her once flawless makeup smeared and her eyes rimmed with red. She looked broken, a far cry from the poised and confident woman who had stolen my husband's heart. "You think you can just tarnish my image and get away with it?" she spat, her voice trembling with barely contained rage. I couldn't help but laugh, the sound echoing off the concrete walls. "Oh, Amanda, this is just the beginning. You're going to lose everything you've schemed for." Her eyes widened, and for a moment I saw a flicker of fear cross her features, but just as quickly it was replaced by a steely resolve. "You have no idea who you're messing with," she hissed, taking a step closer. "I'll destroy you, Lily. You and anyone else who gets in my way." I held my ground, matching her icy glare with one of my own. "Bring it on, sweetheart. I'm not the one with a closet full of skeletons." With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her seething in my wake. It was a small victory, but it was enough to fuel the fire burning within me. From that point on, the gloves were off. Owen and I ramped up our efforts, leaking more and more damning information about Amanda's sordid past. We exposed her financial indiscretions, her web of lies and manipulation, leaving no stone unturned. And as her world crumbled around her, I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of satisfaction. This was justice, plain and simple, a reckoning for all the pain and humiliation she had inflicted upon me and countless others. But even as Amanda's empire crumbled, there was still one final piece of the puzzle left to fall. Derek himself. He had been my partner, my confidant, my everything. And in the end, he had chosen the path of betrayal, casting me aside like a worn-out relic. Well, no more. It was time for Derek to face the consequences of his actions, to see the true monster he had aligned himself with. And I was going to make sure he had a front-row seat to the destruction. The endgame was in sight, and I was ready to unleash hell. The day of reckoning had finally arrived, and I was ready to unleash hell upon Derek and Amanda. With Owen by my side, we had orchestrated a showdown that would bring their web of lies and deceit crashing down around them. It all came to a head at a pivotal company meeting where the board of directors and key clients had gathered to discuss the future of the business. Little did Derek and Amanda know, but Owen and I had been working behind the scenes, gathering support from those disillusioned by the scandal. As Derek took the stage, his cocky demeanor betrayed no hint of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface. Amanda sat in the front row, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer outfit a carefully crafted mask of confidence. But I knew better. I could see the cracks in her facade, the subtle signs of strain that belied her true state of mind. Derek launched into his usual spiel, waxing poetic about the company's bright future and innovative vision. But this time, his words rang hollow, falling on deaf ears. That's when I made my move. Rising from my seat, I cleared my throat and stepped into the aisle, commanding the room's attention with a single pointed glare. "Derek, Amanda, I think it's time we address the elephant in the room," I announced, my voice steady and unwavering. Derek's bravado faltered, his eyes widening as he realized what was happening. Amanda, too, seemed to shrink back in her seat, her perfectly painted lips parting in a silent gasp. "For too long, you two have been running this company into the ground with your selfish, unethical behavior," I continued, my gaze sweeping over the sea of stunned faces. "But no more. The truth is out, and it's time for you to face the consequences." With a nod to Owen, he sprang into action, queuing up a presentation that laid bare the sordid details of Amanda's past. The affairs, the lies, the financial misdeeds that had left a trail of destruction in her wake. As the damning evidence played out on the screen, the room fell deathly silent, save for the occasional gasp or murmur of disbelief. Derek's face had drained of color, his carefully constructed facade crumbling before my very eyes. Amanda, on the other hand, had risen to her feet, her eyes blazing with fury. "You think you've won, Lily?" she snarled, her voice dripping with venom. "You have no idea what you've just unleashed." And with that, she turned on Derek, unleashing a torrent of accusations and revelations that left him reeling. "You want to know the truth, Derek?" she spat, her words cutting through the stunned silence like a knife. "I'm not the only one with skeletons in the closet." What followed was a brutal evisceration of Derek's character, as Amanda laid bare his own web of infidelities, financial misdeeds, and unethical business practices. It was a scorched earth tactic, a desperate bid to salvage what little shred of credibility she had left. But it was too late. The damage had been done, and the once mighty Derek stood before us, a broken and disgraced shell of a man. As the truth came crashing down around them, the board members and clients began to turn on Derek and Amanda, their voices rising in a chorus of outrage and disgust. It was over. Their reign of deceit and manipulation had finally come to an end, and they had no one to blame but themselves. In the chaos that ensued, I caught Derek's eye, and for a fleeting moment I saw a glimmer of regret, a silent acknowledgement of the devastation he had wrought. But it was too little, too late. The damage had been done, and there was no turning back. As Derek and Amanda were unceremoniously ushered out of the meeting, their once bright futures reduced to ashes, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction wash over me. Justice had been served and the scales had finally been balanced. It was a hard-won victory, but one that tasted oh so sweet. In the aftermath of Derek and Amanda's spectacular downfall, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It was as if a weight had been lifted. A burden I had carried for far too long finally cast aside. As I stepped into the role of leading the company, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time to shine, and I was going to seize it with both hands. One of my first orders of business was to implement the eco-friendly community housing project that Derek had always dismissed as a pipe dream. It was an idea that had been simmering in the back of my mind for years, a vision of sustainable living that prioritized the environment and fostered a true sense of community. As I unveiled the plans to the team, I could see the skepticism on their faces, the same doubt that had plagued me for so long. But this time, I refused to let it deter me. "This is the future, people," I declared, my voice ringing with conviction. "A chance to leave a lasting legacy, to build something that truly matters." And to my surprise, they rallied behind me, their initial hesitation giving way to a shared enthusiasm for the project. With each passing day, I could feel myself growing stronger, more confident in my abilities and my vision. Gone was the meek, subservient woman who had allowed herself to be pushed aside and belittled. In her place stood a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had stared adversity in the face and come out on top. It was during this time that I found myself leaning heavily on the support of Emma and Owen, my two closest allies in the battle against Derek and Amanda. I can't believe how much you've grown, Lily, Owen marveled one night over drinks at our favorite haunt. It's like you've finally come into your own. I couldn't help but smile, feeling a swell of pride at how far I had come. It's always been within me, Owen, I replied, my voice tinged with a newfound confidence. I just needed to find the strength to let it out. As our eyes met across the table, I felt a spark of something unfamiliar, a connection that went deeper than mere friendship. It was as if, in the crucible of my personal war, a new bond had been forged, one that held the promise of something more. But I pushed those thoughts aside, content to simply bask in the warmth of Owen's unwavering support and the knowledge that I had finally found my footing. With each passing day, the wounds of Derek's betrayal began to heal, the pain and anger giving way to a sense of inner peace and strength that I had never known before. It was as if I had been reborn, emerging from the ashes of my old life like a phoenix, more resilient and determined than ever. And as I looked to the future, I couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement and possibility. The world was my oyster, and I was ready to take it by storm. No longer would I be content to exist in the shadows, sacrificing my dreams and ambitions for the sake of others. This was my time, my chance to leave a lasting legacy and build something truly remarkable. And with Emma and Owen by my side, I knew that anything was possible. The road ahead was sure to be paved with challenges and obstacles, but for the first time in my life, I felt truly prepared to face them head-on. Derek and Amanda may have tried to break me, but in the end, they had only succeeded in forging me into a stronger, more resilient version of myself. And as I stood on the precipice of a new chapter, I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for the lessons I had learned along the way. The battle may have been hard-fought, but it was one that I had emerged from victorious. A warrior, a survivor, and a force to be reckoned with. The future was mine for the taking, and I had no intention of letting it slip through my fingers.